Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news discussion and, of course, a lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me, as always, is Ian.
Hey, I'm Weiry Writer, and welcome to the end of all things.
Yeah. Yep. Also joining me is David.
Hello, I am Windrunner on the Discord and other places. And I'm happy to be here to talk about Wind and Truth.
That's right.
The second Kaladin book, but we've long been to.
Indeed.
Oh my god.
Also joining us is Jess.
Hello, I'm Lady Lameness, and I don't have a special introduction.
There you go. We also have Veronica.
Hello, I am Cheyenne Sedai on the Discord and forums.
Yep.
This is gonna be a bonkers episode, honestly. I'm very excited.
Yeah,
for
I'm sure
this
we don't have anything to talk about, guys. And last,
short, tiny episode.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have Will.
Hello, I'm number one Taln fan on the Discord.
Yep.
Also excited for our extremely short episode.
Yes, yeah, we'll be done in 30 minutes. Oh, wait. So this is Wind and Truth Reactions 1. If you have not read the book, you should not be here. I'm just saying, because there's some stuff to talk about here. So
Turns out things happen in a book that's over 1,300 pages long.
And a Brandon ending thing. Yeah. If you've read, yeah. So this is your spoiler warning. So get out by
entire Cosmere.
Yeah, entire Cosmere. Yeah, it just everything. We can't not. Sorry. So I think let's just start with some. We'll just go around the room because we're all in one room, right, guys? Yeah.
Sure, totally.
Yeah, totally.
Eric and I are almost in one room.
Yeah,
You're in one house. You're in
the
one
other
building.
side of the house.
I talk very loudly, guys. Very loud. Let's just go around and talk about what you thought about the book, and let's start with Ian. Let's go around.
Wonderful.
I mean, I can start if you want me to.
No, I can start. Having just finished my read an hour and a half ago, I mostly like the book. This version is so much better than the beta version.
Yes.
Hey, funny how that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was a little apprehensive coming into this read of like, I don't know if I like this book. But I do mostly like this book.
Nice. David, what do you think?
Okay. It's so hard to kind of process it sometimes and decide where do we land, even thinking about these characters and what's going to happen for just a decade, it starts to get a little concerning after a while. All in all, I think it was a good ending. I think that this may ultimately probably be my least highly ranked Stormlight book, not for it being much weaker than the others necessarily, but just some things that didn't end up clicking for me 100%. But I loved where the characters ended up. I loved how Kaladin, Dalinar, Shallan, Adolin, how all those clicked together. Most of that I think worked really well. And if there was dragging, it was a little bit more in the middle part. Pretty satisfied with all of that. And just overall, I enjoyed the book, but I think it ended up feeling a little bit rushed to me and a little bit like it could have used a little more polish ultimately for it to 100% fit in with the level I was hoping for. But overall, I enjoyed it.
Jess, what do you think?
I'm with David on this one. I liked the book, but in terms of Brandon's standards, it would be close to the bottom in terms of my favorite Stormlight book. And I also think it could have used longer to have better polishing, to make things smooth out better and make things work a bit better. And it's really hard to know whether I liked it a lot or liked it a little less because it's almost 13,500 pages long. So there's so many points in the book that I could take a snippet.
It isn't 13,000.
It just feels like that.
It just sometimes maybe, yeah.
It really does feel like that sometimes. Like when you have to get through it so quickly to get this podcast out,
Yes.
it really does.
Ooh.
Yeah, when you have to read it so quickly to be able to get this podcast out on time, it does feel very long. But yeah, like if I could take snippets of it, some of them I'd say these are some of my favorite scenes. And other ones I would say I wish I could just skip these bits forever. And it's hard to balance those. So overall, I liked the book. I would reread the book. And I think it's still like down the list for me.
Veronica, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Jess and David here. I really enjoyed the book. I mean, again, to be fair, I did the math on this. If I'm not wrong, subtracting like sleep and eating and all that, I kind of read the book in like 23 hours, which is really fast.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm still processing. There's definitely some scenes
double the speed, because I think the book in total is about 48 hours long if you were to consider it as an audiobook. So
I think it's like
you did it in like
I think it's
half
longer
the
than
time.
that.
something.
Yeah, I think it's got to be
is it?
60.
Rhythm of War is
55, so this is longer.
Okay, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, this is like
time.
60 something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I am like discounting like the previews here because we'd read the previews
true.
already. But like from the end, like from the interludes after day 2 to the end of the book, 23 hours. Like adding up all that time of like actual reading.
Yep.
So yeah, still processing. And there are like scenes from this book that I really, really liked. They're some of the best in the entire series. And then there's some things that I have like more problems with. Again, I do think it definitely came down to like a bit too much of a like rushed editing timeline, which drives me insane. Like if you look at this like on an actual like timeline of like when this book was turned in, when each draft was finished, and when it was published, it is absolutely insane that this book was turned in less than 12 months before the release date for a book of this size. Under normal circumstances, it is at least 1 year.
Yeah, Brandon's the moneymaker, though.
The size into account.
Yeah.
Some debut books go through 2 years of editing before publishing.
Well,
it is absolutely insane.
This
could have
is
used at least
Brandon.
one other round.
They're just going to put it out immediately. They did that in 2016 with fans. It's only worse now.
Well, no, the problem is they've linked it to an event.
To the convention.
And that event cannot
Yeah, you
shift.
can't move it 3 months. Yeah, like Words of Radiance.
Here's what I'll say though: we could have had Secret Project 5 for this con. Swap what your priority.
Yeah,
get that one edited, get that one printed. Like it's a bummer. People will be disappointed. People don't like the delay. It's already been delayed once, and that's not Brandon's thing normally. Yeah, but it was doable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or hey, Brandon, maybe don't release 5 books in 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Because he has to take time off of When the Truth to edit the secret projects, right?
Yeah, which is part of the reason why it took longer. Yeah, for sure.
And there's also the in-between time period that he's set for himself between books of I only want to take this long between the Stormlight books. But if they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then maybe it is worth taking more time between them. And I really hope when we get Back Half and the other series in the future, that isn't something that's put in place. And the quality of the book is put over the quantity of how many can be put out in a certain time frame.
And worries me with the state of the publishing landscape. I don't know how much that's going to happen with the way the industry is moving. I wish it happened. Like they put the quality over like, well, we need this big like release from Brandon to like keep like for afloat.
Yeah, sure.
And I think like the other fact of it too is like Brandon's got this whole plan. Like he wants to write this 36 book mega series that he has now added at least 8 novels to, just like outside the regular timeline. And so at least in his head. And so like there's a part of it too where I'm like, well, like, he does have to like this book has to come out and he has to write the next one if he's going to get this done. He needs to. Part of it is
you can't just delay every single year. But like, yeah, this is I see what
But
you guys
for
are saying.
like the last book of a sequence.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it
Out
would
of-
have used
Mhm.
more time.
Yeah.
Out of any of the
It's
Stormlight
worth
books, I
taking
feel
it
like
for
this
the
is
last book because you want to nail it.
Mhm.
You want to get it to land.
yeah, and I think this is like one of the most highly anticipated Cosmere books he's released in a while.
Mhm.
Because it's,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Stormlight and it's been 4
Oh,
years
ever.
for people to theorize, and so like people are going to have super high expectations for it.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Will?
I generally liked the book. I really enjoyed new Taln content. Shockingly,
I'm shocked personally.
I was pleased with all the Taln stuff that happened. I think there was a lot of like really cool plot moments that, like, some of them especially needed more editing for them to really hit as hard as some stuff like, the climaxes of Oathbringer, Rhythm of War. I feel like, there was really cool stuff, but the delivery wasn't like quite to where I was hoping it would be. But overall, I did enjoy the book a lot.
Well, I think then I'm probably the most positive about the book, which is maybe not surprising to people
I mean,
because
it's not surprising.
I like plot books. This book is I really like this book. This book has really good for its size. I guess there's an asterisk here. For its size, the pacing is really good, actually. Like, there was only one part that like didn't land to me, and that was Jasnah. Yeah, at least like the debate. Otherwise, like, I thought the pacing was really good. Even through the beginning, we get spiritual realm stuff. It's such a good fusion of plot and character. Like, I think Dalinar's such a good example of that, and Adolin was as well, I think, where, like, Dalinar's, like, we really got some Dalinar stuff of, like, who he is, and it was great to see, say, like, the Elhokar scene at the end of Way of Kings, and just like seeing that in a new light, like, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best call. Like, in Way of Kings, you're really excited that that's happening because you're really annoyed with Elhokar, but it's like, okay, maybe that wasn't the best idea.
When you change perspective,
yeah, we get just the best plot of the book, in my opinion, and Adolin's such a good like plot and character fusion there with like an awesome ending. We got a ton of lore, so much lore. It's insane how much lore we get. So it's like, this is like all the stuff I like. Now, I do think it is lower than Words of Radiance and Oathbringer to me. And I don't know if it is just because every character is spread out. Like, honestly, like, I was paging through Battle of Thalen Field to find that Ash scene in there, just determine how Ash feels about Town's hands there. But I was paging through that, I'm like,
she feels them in a completely sisterly way, and not at all incesty.
Yes, yeah, obviously. And I'm just like, I think I like that better, but this is like such wide scope. And so my thought is, this book is stuffed to the gills. There's so much in this book.
It really is.
Brandon has an end point. We got Night of Sorrows. We have this ending. He's basically not blowing up Roshar, but it's really bad, actually.
Yeah.
So
no,
Brandon's
it's
like
imploding instead of exploding.
Yeah. And so Brandon has to get through so much stuff. And so I can see why people would think that it is rushed or just not liking some plot lines. Like, there's so many plot lines. If you don't like 2 of them, then it's like, okay, there's still like 6 more if you include this flashback separately or something. So I think people will have the most to nitpick because one plot line might not land for you. And for me, there is one. But overall, man, like, just reading day 10, it's like, oh man, this is really good, guys. Oh, this is so good. And just all the stuff with honor and oh man, it's great. It's such wide scale that it's a lot. How about that? It's a lot.
Yeah, and I think like, again, the book pulled me through the entire way. I never wanted to stop, even when I had to. It's just like a lot of those like nitpicks and like, oh well, this didn't land so well, came like after, like in the processing phase and talking with people.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's never that I was like, oh, I'm bored by this scene. Like, I don't like this. It is more than like once you put it into context and you start like going through like character arcs specifically, or how this affects like the setup for what's coming next, or even like how it was a wrap up like to like this plot line or whatever that's been set up for books and books and books. Like that's when things start falling apart a little bit more. It's less of a like in the moment thing of like, oh, I didn't like this, I'm not feeling like connected to it.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
a bit more.
It's like when you're reading it, it's all very exciting. Given time to think through some things, it's like, I don't know if I like that.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty easy just with how much stuff there is to like, find all these things to nitpick about, but it's still like I feel like I complain, about a lot of different sections, but overall I really enjoyed it. Just, as I think I finished like the last half of it and I just read for like 14 hours straight, like Veronica was saying. Like, I couldn't put it down.
Easy
we
to
were
do.
like reading like in tandem.
We were neck and neck.
Just a tiny bit before you. So
yeah. I finished at like 3:30 a.m.
It is definitely easy to focus on stuff that's like, I didn't like this thing and I'm gonna complain about it. And we will do that, but we're gonna talk about things we liked. Well, you can skip the chapters. If you don't want to listen to that, that's fine, audience. Like, if you love the book, that's great. If you have things to complain about, you can go to that section. So it'll be good. And there's going to be reactions too, which will have different people complaining about different things. Wow. So you'll get so much Winded Truth content here. Wow.
Yeah, it's just a psychological thing where people are more prone to complain because those memories actually just stick in your mind a lot easier than positive memories, because positive memories just blend in as an everyday thing, whereas negative ones always stand out because they're the ones you don't want to happen.
The one asshole YouTube comment among many great ones. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So we're going to get to like going through each like character and plot line in a bit. I think we should maybe start with just like, well, let's just chat for a little bit about, the end, because I think maybe audience, how are you guys doing? Put in the comments of how are you doing? How are you feeling after that? How are you guys?
Overwhelmed.
We have to change the wiki because we definitely thought the true desolation was one thing.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
it's
stuff.
like, like Everstorm got summoned in Words of Radiance. Now it's the true desolation.
Ian, I'm not thrilled about what we need to do about the Everstorm Coppermind article, because that's not going to be fun.
It's going to be fine. The True Desolation is going to be way more annoying.
The True Desolation is going to be more annoying, yes, for sure. Because now that period post Words of Radiance and this, it has no name.
Now,
transition period.
Like the Everstorm is now two different things.
Called the same thing.
It's still the same thing. It just got bigger.
Fashion.
Like it's one thing that turned into another thing, at least in my mind.
I'm not excited for all the spoiler policy implications where people constantly complain about things 10 years from now. But you know what? That's fine. We won't worry about that right now. We
really need to talk spoiler policy after this book.
It's a disaster. Yeah, you're just screwed, guys. Sorry.
It's a wiki. There's gonna be spoilers.
Well, just everything.
Yeah.
But
I don't think everyone's gonna agree with this, but I feel like the Blackthorn is also going to be an issue.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a big issue.
The Blackthorn is not Dalinar.
True.
So we're going to need a separate Blackthorn article
what could go wrong
going forward that, I don't know, maybe in the future Dalinar comes back and then it's going to be the same.
Don't do it, Brandon.
I don't think
don't do it, Brandon.
That would be bad. That would be really bad.
That would be it for me.
That would be it. Yeah. So the Night of Sorrows, guys, we saw it. Wow. It's pretty sorrowful. It's pretty bad, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Shout out to Grace for believing long that the Night of Sorrows would eventually come.
Yep.
There it is.
When she finished the book, Grace isn't here right now, but she immediately went to Pooley's interlude. Great.
Yeah, she is.
But you know, the night is darkest now, so we can have some sailors come back with some light. So like, yeah, that's all very plausible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so we're in apocalyptic wasteland where Stormlight doesn't work, and so the entire ecology is destroyed. And yeah, great.
Stormlight doesn't just not work; it straight up doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't
anymore.
exist. It doesn't exist.
Gone.
I'm like, what?
That was the brutal part where like Shallan is just like, "There's no more Stormlight. You can't get back.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
ever.
yeah.
It's
Like,
how
oh
long?
jeez, oh my god,
Forever.
holy crap, oh man,
I know.
yeah, you can't even just like have some gemstones with it. Like, oh jeez,
Yeah, I legitimately hope that Brandon commits to calling the second half maybe Voidlight Archive, maybe Warlight Archive, whatever you want. But
Warlight,
commit to calling it
boo,
something
it's gotta
else,
be Voidlight.
please.
Warlight
Voidlight,
sucks
man.
as a name.
Didn't the end note kind of end with like the story of the Stormlight Archive will
Yes.
continue in book
Yes.
6 through 10
Yes.
though? Like
Yeah,
I did
yeah,
not
it
get.
Yeah, that's the thing.
belief.
That's why I think it's a marketing reason of like, I mean, maybe the spoilers or whatnot.
One interesting thing was that I thought was a bit strange was that we had the postlude this book because you know it's like the postlude to the Stormlight Archive.
Stormlight
So
Archive.
I feel like you know if it is Stormlight Archive, it should be end of book 10.
It's a
Yeah,
mid
That
dude.
to me was really
Well,
strange. It's not postlude to the first half of Stormlight Archive.
yeah.
And like that, like the postlude is one of those reasons that I'm like commit to calling the second half something else.
Yeah.
Like I get that maybe it would be a bit spoilery to like have that transition like out in the like marketing realm, but I think it works better anyways.
That'd be so good.
I mean, it's going to be spoilery anyway if you pick up book 6 and just read the back of it or the inside cover.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So-
A little
True.
bit.
I don't think it's actually going to be that spoilery if it was called something like Voidlight, because people who haven't read the first half are going to understand it. But also, I think Brandon's moving more towards a like different eras type setup instead of having a 10-book sequence. Like we all still think of it as 10 books, but he's clearly splitting them and having the time jump. And it's very similar to like era 1, era 2. It's just not as big of a time
Yeah,
jump.
same characters and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which like that's
Yeah.
always kind of been the case of like the front 5 and the back 5 being split
Mm.
and having more or less different casts of characters with a lot of commonality but not total commonality. But also like we're not going to get book 6 for 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like at that point if they start advertising stuff as Voidlight Archive, people have had 10 books to read, 10 years to read this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it'll be fun.
True.
I kind of wonder if he would sell it differently, now that we're here, if he would have been like, oh yeah, I'm running 2 5-book series as opposed to 1 10-book series,
Maybe.
but now that's kind of like, that's got in the fandom, that's got like, everyone's like, oh yeah, this is a big 10-book series, so it's a little bit,
Yeah.
but it feels weird if there's really no more Stormlight to have 5 books of the Stormlight Archive with no Stormlight.
The only thing I'll riot about if they call it Warlight Archive, because that name sucks. Like you could just call it Voidlight. It's fine. Voidlight also kind of doesn't exist, so you can just call that Voidlight because it sounds way better. That's fine. That's fine with me. You're already
It is a
calling
better name,
the Everstorm 2 different things, so you can just call it's different Voidlight now. It's fine. They're all spread.
It's
all
Voidlight Plus.
Voidlight Plus. Easy.
It makes me wonder if you would even label it as book 6 or if it would just go back to book 1 of the next half.
Yeah.
And like just trying to treat it as a separate series.
I guess, but he put 6 through 10 in the end of it, though.
Yeah,
like that. Like I just wouldn't have put that in there if I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it
But in
is
10 years,
still
that might be
10
different.
books
Yeah.
in his mind. Because like 10 is just too important to the setting of the world for it not to be. It's just like it's 10 books, but it's also 2 sets of 5.
Yeah. Gonna be a little
Yeah,
weird.
I guess we probably didn't need a second sub-series title. We could have been like, had 2 separate subset series, but he's never been good at naming his sub-series anyway. Like, Mistborn were still.
I think it's because he just writes cool stories and does not think of marketing implications of that, but that's probably
Which is
the
fair,
case.
yeah.
But
I'm sure his publisher is pleased.
have fun
with that.
advertising Air 3 store.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
that's what a disaster. But yeah, Dalinar's dead. What's up? But I mean, did we still get Blackthorn? Kind of Dalinar, not
Oh my
really,
God.
but
I'm so I loved Blackthorn so much. I'm like, this excites me on a fundamental level.
yeah.
Because, like,
I mean,
hey, what's gonna happen when Adolin has to fight the Blackthorn?
Oh, okay. That's that's
Oh.
actually really good. Holy crap.
Oh,
That would be-
don't
Okay.
say that.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
say
It's
that.
gonna happen.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so
Oh.
good.
Yes.
Actually, I don't think it's gonna be Adolin, or if it is, it's gonna be Adolin and Renarin. Because
Yeah,
something
Renarin has
jumped
to be
out
in
to
there.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he has the title "The Son of Thorns," and I think that's very deliberate that it's called
Mm.
Thorns.
But yes.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Blackthorn is gonna be a one and done villain. I think there will be multiple
Oh no.
conflicts with him.
It's like
So
a few.
everybody gets
He's
their
a
shares.
long-term end of Cosmere villain
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
this point. He's
wild,
another
eh?
Kelsier.
I guess, but I don't know. It'd be weird to have these characters not resolve the conflict with him in the second
Yeah.
half. But I can just imagine so clearly, like, Adolin fighting an unknown shard bearer in like dark plate, and he's just like, something is so familiar
Yeah,
about
because they all
him.
think he's
you know,
dead.
like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
like,
going to be
he'll just
totally
be like,
And like
blindsided.
Navani's reaction when she comes back from her coma,
Mm.
like it's gonna be so good.
There's some potential for some very fun character interactions.
Yep.
Book
Mhm.
6.
yeah,
And
yeah. I guess Adolin will talk to his father one more time,
Eventually.
yeah.
at least.
And like I just love the parallel of the Blackthorn with the Stormfather. Like the Stormfather isn't Tanavast, but he has Tanavast memories.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh,
the
true.
Blackthorn isn't Dalinar,
Oh, yeah.
but he has Dalinar.
Oh, that's good, actually.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my god.
And I guess we get the same thing with Kaladin because no one knows he's a herald. It's just like, oh yeah, he died.
The
He-
Wind knows he's a herald. She's just not telling anyone.
Yeah, the wind doesn't talk to people anymore. I guess like that's what the epigraph said, which is wild.
When Kaladin comes back, that is going to be the most triumphant moment.
Hell
It
yeah.
will all be worth it.
Oh my
All my
goodness.
complaints will fall away because it will be phenomenal.
It will be really good. Yeah.
He has
But
to
I
come
think,
back with
like-
a superhero pose.
Mhm.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
he ended in a superhero pose with the swishing of the
Oh,
cape. He has
absolutely.
to come back with like a Black Widow style. I'm landing on the ground.
Yeah. Yes.
And like with Brandon's love for Kaladin, of course we're getting that.
Yeah.
Like there's
Oh, yeah.
no way we
Oh
aren't.
yeah. 100%.
You can get all the heralds just like landing in like a fan behind him. Just, dramatic
Like,
sequence.
Avengers style.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It does make me wonder when he will come back, though, because initially I was thinking it's got to be book 10 to draw it out. But we have 2 Herald books.
Yeah, it's
And
gotta
I
be
feel like
before then,
2
right?
Heralds have to be back on Roshar for the Herald books.
Yeah.
So then they all would be
Mhm.
back on Roshar.
I would wager money end of book 6.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
I was kind of thinking,
Yeah.
like,
That's a good one, yeah.
if you don't want to,
Oh, yeah.
you don't want to step on the new characters. Like,
Yeah.
you want to give them like a whole. Like, if Kaladin's back right away, you're like, everyone's like, oh, it's Kaladin,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
give him a whole book and like an epilogue where, like, just like the town epilogue,
one.
like a Kaladin
Oh, that would be
epilogue.
so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's the parallel with the
Oh,
one with Taln.
yes.
That's good.
It gives us time to like see the new status of the world.
Yeah. Oh man.
Mhm. Yeah, hopefully he's not going, I'm too late, and he's like a total madman as well. Like, that'd be a bummer.
Well, I
but
think they're going to be good. Hopefully, like that's kind of
I
the
think
promise.
they're gonna be better.
Yeah,
That would be ironic if he, helps all the other heralds become sane, but then Kaladin becomes insane.
Oh, that'd be
in the
bad. No,
process.
that's not gonna
Everyone's
be the
sane
case.
except Kaladin.
That's going to be bad.
I don't think
You
that's
need a
gonna
novella
happen, but
of
it's gonna
just
be
group
ironic.
therapy.
Yeah, group therapy. Along with the Silladin novella. No.
What we really need is the Gavador novella. But we'll talk
Yes.
about Gavador.
Yes.
Syl becomes the Storm Mother.
Storm Mother. Ooh. Okay. Okay.
She's the daughter. She's the eldest child of the Stormfather. She inherits his position.
Nice.
perhaps.
Maybe she brings back the High Storm.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
wondering what the
gotcha.
implications of that would be.
It's interesting.
if I feel like if we like fix Rashar, it's that like the wind will be the new high storm. Like I feel like
that's
they'll
probably
restore
true,
like
huh?
that will
Yeah.
kind of happen.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably true. Yeah.
But I just remember not having read Way of King's Prime, but knowing things. It's like, still in that book was the East Wind.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was.
I had forgotten
Wait.
about that. Oh my god.
That's wild. That's true.
It still didn't exist in that book.
The stuff that became Syl was the East Wind.
I guess I thought that was a different book entirely that she got
Wild.
pulled in from because they didn't really have Spren in Way of King's Prime, but I could be wrong. But
So-
we want to talk more about contest stuff. Like I feel like that's where we went, and then we kind of got
Yeah.
I loved Nohadon. Like the whole
Yes.
book, like all the like flashbacks. I was like, oh, we skipped Nohadon. Like that's kind of that's kind of boring.
True,
That's,
that's a good
disappointing.
point. Yeah.
But Brandon was saving him for us, and
That was such a good
what a
moment.
scene!
Yes.
And I just love how just, it's the big climax of the book, all this stuff's happening, and Nohadon's just like, you want some bread?
Eating
And
bread.
they're just eating bread together at the end of the world.
Bread and butter, food of the gods.
That and just like I
Me too.
renounce my oaths and just what's happening.
Oh,
the
that was so good.
whole battle. It's so nicely foreshadowed with the Sunmaker's Gambit and also the Tanabas
Mhm.
flashbacks, which is wild. We'll talk about
And-
those.
And the Way of King's epigraphs.
Yeah,
With like
oh,
no
yeah. Yep. So we get like this beautiful thing where Honor tried to find help to deal with Odium, and he just couldn't, like the whole time. And Dalinar's like, "Oh, we'll force them to do it." And then just Dalinar's line of "Good luck, Teravagian." It's like, oh man, yeah, the battle for the
So
Cosmere
good.
starts right now. Like, oh man,
Yes.
And, like, I can just
Oh,
like
yeah.
picture so clearly of like Teravangian's like ascension to retribution, and just like the eyes of the Cosmere
Yeah,
just
oh,
turning
man.
towards
Yeah, just
him.
the other shards
Oh,
so good.
facing
kind
it.
of like, like, we kind of need art of that. Like, I don't know how
Yeah.
you like.
Mhm.
RJ
Yeah,
will make it
I
happen.
don't know how
Like,
like
Roshar
I just
and like
don't like that.
Teravangian,
Yeah.
and then like around like all the
Yeah.
shapes of like the shards. I don't know how you do that, but it would be very cool.
Oh, it's so good. All that stuff was A plus. Like made
Up tier.
it so great. Oh man. It also worked so well with what we learned of Honor and Honor the Power. Because I have always been on the train. Honor, without context of other things, not actually good.
Mhm.
And so we finally get Dalinar ascending to Honor, and it's like we get like the Shardic scene of like what Honor is. And just like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
Honor would just totally destroy a village for being slighted. Just like that. That's just what the
Mhm.
power would do.
Mhm.
And then you fuse that in with Odium, and then you're like, yeah, they do kind of want the same thing. Like it fits really well. It fits really well with Rhythm of War that those powers can go together. It's just, oh man, you can tell that that's the thing Brandon's been thinking about.
Retribution.
Retribution.
I really like that
Retribution
part,
is
man.
so perfect for that
Yes.
intent. It just
Oh yeah.
clicks perfectly. And it's so good.
Oaths would be important, and Retribution would destroy anyone who thinks otherwise. Like, okay, all right, jeez. Woo.
I
Back
love how
your line.
how Honor the Shard is, and the thing that matters most is the sworn promise, works so well with Nohadon as well. Just the conversation
Mhm.
where Dalinar goes, I have to kill a child, and Nohadon's like, I've killed many children, because that's what you have to do as a king. He would take the shard really well, I think. I don't know
Nohadon,
whether
yeah.
he would be a good person with it, but
Yeah.
I think Nohadon's character worked really well with what we learned of the Shard of Honor.
and it's like it also gets paralleled a little earlier with Adolin's whole thing about oaths versus
Mhm.
promises.
Yes.
Mhm.
And like
Yeah.
he has a line about like, oh, maybe this is just semantics, and like Kaladin and Shallan would disagree, but this is how I view it. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes like oaths aren't worth it if they get broken. If you stick to something that's not worth it, or if they get broken and you give up. Promises just mean you keep trying. even
Yeah.
when it
Mhm.
does when you can't
That's so
succeed.
good.
He did get to win his argument with Dalinar like a little bit from afar, which was fun. You know,
It's wild that they never talked in this book, but it still worked
I
really well
know.
with like Adolin struggling with that and just like
Mhm.
having that conflict. Like, oh man, Brandon did it for
Mhm.
there.
It's also a whole thing that honor isn't splintered that I have complicated feelings about.
Yeah, uh-huh. Sure.
It
We'll
does
talk about
mean like honor was becoming self-aware, as we know investiture does given enough time. Honor as an entity showing up in that Noadon vision, like
That was-
as
that
a
was fun.
child. I also love that they are an Alethi child, because the Alethi are like the most warlike and also the most
Mhm.
obsessed with oaths.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, of course they would be an Alethi kid.
Yeah.
Of course they would be.
Yeah.
And also, like, now, as part of Retribution, Honor is still somewhat self-aware and is watching Taravangian.
Mm.
It's like, maybe this guy who I thought was cool is actually super sucky.
The fact that Taravangian has to justify at the very end his
Mhm.
or like his decisions and his actions to the Shard still, I think shows that he's still not perfect for it, even though he works so much better than Ray's.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely
Mhm.
interesting in this book to see. We've kind of seen people pick up shards and then like, you are the shard, like, haha, you've got it forever. But the shards in this book are a lot more. They've got a lot more agency than we've seen with the shards
Mhm.
before, where they're like, maybe I'm going to go hang out with Mishram, and I don't want to be with Rays anymore, or maybe, you know, Honor shard has that little of intelligence. I do feel like that's like also seeing whatever Taravangian's downfall is going to be. Is
Mhm.
that like
Absolutely.
the shard, like, you know, the shard is getting intelligent, and the shard will eventually learn what Dalinar wanted it to learn,
Mhm.
which is
What
a promise is
true
only as
honor
good as
is.
what. Yeah, a promise is only as good as
Yeah.
what you're actually doing.
Oh,
Doing something for the sake of doing it, even if it is hurting you or hurting others, isn't worth it.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
and it's so good with the line, even if everyone wanted the war to stop, the powers don't. Right? It's like the
Mhm.
only way for the war to actually end is if we get them to stop, and this is the only way that you can do that. It's like, it's so good, because Taravangian even considers stopping the entire war, which is wild, but like, yeah, he doesn't have the same biases that Race does, and so he really considers it. And like the power's like, yeah, no, I need to get out. I gotta kill these guys.
Yeah.
I do think part of that was still Taravangian over just the Shard,
True.
because Taravangian wants power.
Yeah,
and the
oh,
ending
absolutely,
really
for sure.
shows that.
Mhm.
And the ending is great with Dalinar saying good luck with this Shard, because Taravangian's just always kind of had that thirst for power.
Mhm.
And I think that plays into him deciding not to end the war as well. Like, a lot of it is the Shard. But if he ends the war, then he doesn't get everything that he wants.
Yep. Yeah, he would never do that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right.
You just get to prove Dalinar wrong, you
Yeah,
know,
and-
which is ultimately
yes.
a big driver.
Yeah, just like the entire contest is just for that, for proving Dalinar that Taravangian is right and he's not.
Yeah, like Taravangian loves doing that, and I think that's part of why I like Dalinar, like finally like understanding the long view like so much and being like, oh, this is what the real solution is. It's not about winning this contest, like, and the terms we've set. It's not about, because that's just going to perpetuate the cycle. We have to end the cycle somehow. And I think that's like a really like genius part of the ending, because like as much as we complain about like the loopholes in the contract and whatnot, I think
Yeah,
that
uh-huh.
subverts it in a very like interesting way.
Yeah.
Like, even had the contract like not been written with weird loopholes and all that, I think it has to go more than the contract, than what the contract had stipulated, because like neither Dalinar nor Wit nor Rays nor Taravangian really knew like they didn't have this like long view for the entire Cosmere before. They were just so focused on like, okay, these are the consequences for Roshar. This is what like the consequences are for me that they didn't see it. And I think that this is a really good like break point to like bring Roshan to like the rest of the conflict for the Cosmere. And I really, really like that.
Yeah.
And that plays in really well with an overarching theme of the book, because we have the same thing happening with Renarin and Rlain and Ba-Ado-Mishram, and the only way to end the cycle there is for both sides to decide to end the cycle.
Oh, yeah. Very true. Yeah. Good themes.
Yeah,
And
not really
then
Skybreaker
actually-
theme, but good themes.
Not really Skybreaker themes. Oh, yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes. We'll talk about the shit of our plot for sure. Yes.
And then we get Venli as well, and the listeners finally making peace with the Alethi. And not only does that close out the plotline we have had since book one that literally started the book, it's also playing into the same theme of both sides need to agree to this.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I think the theme work in general in this book was really good. Like, for like the other quibbles that I have with the book, like the themes, I think really stuck. Adolin, the ending, what Jessie just pointed out about like the listeners. I mean, even like the other plot lines with like Ba-Ado-Mishram and Kaladin and the Heralds and like all this thing. I think that in general, like the theme work was like really strong, and like Brandon had something he wanted to say. I feel like a lot of times like Brandon can be so focused on like plot and world building and character that the themes like fall a bit to the wayside. That definitely wasn't the case here.
No.
Like they were
Yeah.
present throughout the entire book, and I really love how like they were like built up between like the epigraphs and what was actually happening and the characters' reflections, and like all culminating like in this ending.
Yeah, and I also think that Zeth's whole theme of like choices worked really well for me.
That's a
I
good
think
point.
like his ending of his character arc like
Mhm.
largely worked for me because it had kind of been set up this whole thing about choices. So his
Yeah,
whole
that's a
fifth
good point.
ideal like really worked well for me.
And then like Dalinar making a choice because Taravangian's trying to like box him in so that Dalinar can't
Right,
make a
you
winning
only
choice.
have two choices.
Yeah. That's a good point. That does connect really well, actually, in an interesting way.
We mentioned it earlier, like we briefly touched on it, but the postlude, I think, worked really well to bring like that touch of brightness to the ending,
Yeah.
where it's
Mhm.
very doom and gloom, and just the way that it ends out Calic's arc as well with the prelude was beautifully done, I think.
Mhm.
Beautifully done, and I love Kaladin being there and just come back for one last job, Heralds, and we're gonna get it done. It's like I love crap like that. It's
And,
good.
and it's also like in the prelude, the heralds betray Taln.
Yeah.
And in the postlude, Taln forgives them.
Forgives
It is-
them.
Mm.
So good, and
Honest-
Kaladin's good. I like this.
And I think we're going to
Kaladin
get,
is
yeah, Kaladin is good. And I think we're going to get Shallan's drawing of Calic as well because of this.
Mm.
Like the potential future she saw that could have been who he could have
Ooh.
been. I think this is going to lead to that.
Oh, that's interesting. True.
That would be
I
cool.
think this is really
I
going
don't-
to help with their magical issues that came about of like breaking
Cognitive
of
shadows,
pact.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I think that would be maybe the only one we've seen of Shallan's like kind of vision, like vision electrum drawings, like
Kind
that
of
we'd
like-
actually
yeah.
see come true. I think everyone else, it's never it didn't happen for Moray's.
So
Bluth
sad.
got killed.
That's actually not true. We saw what was his name?
Y'all,
Galen guy? Yeah, them coming back onto land when she thought they all died, and then he's
That's-
in Wonder Sail.
Dawn Shard. Yeah.
That's
No,
not
don't
quite what I'm
shut-
talking
that's
about
it.
though. I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
about like her visualizing like a future version of someone, like who they could be, like, and them actually becoming that
Oh,
person, as
okay.
opposed to just like Yelb is alive somewhere.
Okay, I was just dumping all that in as she's got some sort of ability that
Yeah.
It's similar to what is it?
Fortune?
Gold?
Yeah, like Electrum and Gold.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
alternate future
Yeah.
is kind of what it is. Yeah. But that'd be great. That'd be really cool. I'd love to see like him come back as a hero.
I think we will. For
Twilight's
that.
great. He's so much fun. I would love to see him not doubting himself all the time.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. And I think the back half is supposed to be more Heralds focused in general.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I feel like we have to get like some actual character, like more character development as far as like each of the Heralds. I mean, like we got some like Nail and Ishar stuff, but we really haven't delved super far into most of the other Heralds.
Yeah.
It would be so exhausting to get a character arc after 7,000 years. You're like, oh, I have to grow like again, you know? Like, really? Like, I haven't figured it all out at this point. All right.
Maybe that's Ash's arc. Her figuring out her feelings for Taln definitely aren't sibling feelings.
Hey, no,
Look,
we're getting Jasnah
gets
Taln
off.
for real.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's sad how plausible.
Is it not an arc to follow Talon around saying mean things to people? Because I thought it was.
I didn't read Way of Kings Prime. So let's get on into some character arcs, and I think we have some. We're going to start with things we thought were really good, and so I think we got to start with Adolin, who had honestly just a great arc. Like of the plot lines, Adolin was amazing, especially of the non-Shinovar, non-spiritual realm plot lines. Adolin's the top there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Adolin tops
In general, in the book.
like the Shinovar and spiritual plot lines
Yeah.
too.
I'm just-
honestly think
He's
I
just
guess-
the best.
I guess what I mean by that is like going into this book, I expected a Shinovar plot, and I expected like a Dalinar honor thing. I didn't expect an Adolin plot, an entire thing, and so I was like, it was such a pleasant surprise, just how much I loved it. You know,
so good.
it was so good. It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I went into Adolin's
Honestly,
plot
Adolin
line.
is the consensus favorite
Yeah,
plot line.
maybe.
Yeah, and I think I went into Adolin's plot line like kind of when we got like the vague description like on Amazon or whatever, and we kind of knew like the vague like what the different plot lines would be.
Sure.
I was kind of thinking Adolin would honestly be my least favorite, just because like
Sure.
especially like going into like, you know, end of part 2, I was like, okay, there's like it just seems like just going to be like a straight battle. Like I wasn't expecting, you know, we're not going to be getting like crazy lore, you know, there's not like a lot of radiance. Just going to be like a straight fight, but I was pleasantly surprised that it was my favorite.
In some ways, it is also the least Stormlighty plot arc. Because like there's no radiance, like we're not really doing like Fabrial's friend stuff. Like Nodum is there, and he has shard plate, but like not as much of it as like we get in other plots. It is mostly just Adolin is a phenomenal character.
Yeah.
And it's just very well written.
Yeah.
Which can't be said of other plot arcs.
Also, I found that it was one of the most character-focused plot lines instead of action outside things happening plot lines. Like, so much of it is... Yeah, it's character over plot, I found. Because so much of it is internal Adolin thoughts about his place in the world, his father, and of the scenes we get, you could probably summarize them pretty well into Adolin thinks a lot about X things. He plays essentially Magic the Gathering, and then the ending happens. And I really like that because, like, I'm a character reader. So his story really stood out to me because so much of it was internal. And I loved at the end how he forgave Dalinar. And he had to go through all of the emotional, internal, mental thinking about it to get to that point. But it felt like it worked really well. Like it felt natural to forgive him And then we get Dalinar sending like I'm sorry to him, and that made me tear up.
Yeah.
I agree with a ton of what Jess said there. And I think that, like, you know, not to pat myself on the back a little bit, I did call early what was happening with the Spren. I knew the shard blades were going to pop up. I was like, oh, they're the ones that have vanished forever.
Yep.
But it didn't really matter because, like, I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen. But like I was so engaged with like his relationship with Yanagon, all of that stuff that was going on, you know, that it did, like, I was like, you know, when we get to it, we'll get to it. But I was enjoying the whole ride there. I think like my two, aside from the end where he sucks the plate off of a beady, obviously.
Amazing.
My favorite two little moments were when he has that conversation with Nora and about Yanagon, and he's like, he needs a friend.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that. I thought she was characterized really well, and like kind of like her motherliness that has, you know, that she doesn't really show, but you kind of like, oh, she really does have a bond with this boy. That, and when he saves the Aza shard bearer, just like Dalinar saves Sadius, you know, he cuts through the body of the enemy forces so he can pull him up. You know, I was like, oh, you are Dalinar's son. You may be really mad at him right now.
Getting a dire form and flinging using that as a weapon. Like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, I love Adolin as a character so much. And like, I already liked him a lot. He was like one of my favorites. But this book, it was just perfect. How hard he tries. That part especially like really hit me. He's always been in conflict with like the Radiant, you know, the reason he's a POV character was because he needed to be like kind of like a dissenting voice to Dalinar when Dalinar was first getting the visions.
Right.
And he's always like questioning this like new status quo. And he starts like losing his place in the world, but Adolin never stops trying. He's always like, I'm gonna be there for my friends. I'm gonna be supportive. The way he manages to like get Shallan kind of like out of her shell, and he doesn't care like all this trauma that's happened to her, and he's like always there for her. That was fantastic in Rhythm of War, and that kind of like behavior just continues here. Gox's friendship, the whole thing with Maya was amazing. This book, just top tier. Love her.
It's great.
Even May-Aladar surprised me. And like,
May-Aladar.
How
May-Aladar?
May-Aladar. Yes, hell yeah. Love them.
And how Adolin says, well, I'm not that good of a commander. And like May and like the what's his name? The
Kolak.
Is it Zarb?
Zarb.
Zarb.
And Zarb point out like, no, that's exactly what a good commander does. And in terms of like caring for his soldiers and being like so personally invested, and then having that like flipped on him when he's hurt and his soldiers are all like, okay, we care about you, Adolin, like we're gonna visit you, we're gonna make sure you're fine, like you're well, like that you don't put this much pressure on yourself. Like it pays dividends for like what his arc has been the entire series. And I am so happy he didn't die, because I was legitimately worried. The Deathlands was flying since part 1. I was worried when the Thunderclast fell on him. I was like, please tell me Adolin survives, and he did. And I think this is really good, because like Kaladin, I think that Adolin's arc couldn't have ended with him dying, because it like click with what it's been. And so I think that finding this new role that's different from the Radiance and like wholly his own was just like perfect for him. Sad that he couldn't talk to Dalinar, but he still managed to like come to that realization, and Dalinar kind of did as well, like sending like, I'm sorry. And so I think that was also like a promise fulfilled. It just made so many things like click that have been going on like for the entire series. He's a wonderful character. I love him.
Yep.
My username didn't have like my word count like for the book, just so that it's in my face constantly. I would put it as number 1 Adolin fan, because I love him so much.
Yeah.
One other thing with this arc that I really liked, that I was pleasantly surprised by, was I wasn't expecting Yanagon to be like one of my favorite side characters.
Yes.
Because I really liked what Brandon did with him. And then honestly, my favorite part was at the end, because you have him sneaking into the palace which ties back to when we first were introduced to him. And that's
So
just
good.
like, there's just, it's so poetic. And I really just love how Brandon, I mean, I don't think, we definitely, I feel like he's probably going to be a POV character later on.
Yeah, probably.
I feel like he's kind of got to be.
Oh,
But I really love how Brandon just like concluded that part of his arc.
The Yanagan coming back to like lead them into that's the whole like something maybe destiny of the Cosmere.
Yeah,
of,
a
like,
little bit.
prophecy, like there's like some prophecy going on, but like what does destiny mean? Like, was Yanagan put there, or is it all just coincidence? That's fascinating to me. But yeah, I was like, I loved Adolin. The one small part of Adolin's sequence that I just am not on board with is, okay, like they summon, like Maya comes back and he's about to give all of the shards to the people, and he just yells, "Unoathed arm up." And I'm like, I was 100% with Yanagan on like, what? Like, Adolin, you can't Avengers assemble when nobody knows what the Avengers are. Like, no. It was like, she's just like exceeded my limit to appreciate. It's just like, no, Adolin, no, that's stupid. Don't say that.
That's so funny.
I love it.
Person.
I love it though.
I loved it. I was like, oh yeah, he's got a flair for the dramatic.
Yeah,
Adolin's
absolutely.
always-
This is the guy
I
who
mean, I
entered.
gotta give Dalinar son. They're drama queens.
He entered Azir with a cape and is like, yeah, cape's good. Yeah, hell yeah.
A lot of like with those lines, like with the Unoath Assemble, or like later on with some of Kaladin's, like with the Honor's dead, but I'll see what I can do. I feel like a lot of those lines in the moment, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And kind of later I was like, yeah, that's a bit cheesy, but it works well in the moment. I think it's cool, like, while I'm reading it.
some other parallels that I noticed about like Adolin being Dalinar's son is the leadership aspect of, like we were saying, like
Yes.
Adolin's a good leader because he isn't looking for the power of it. He's connecting with the soldiers and all of that in the way that leaders don't normally do, which is what makes him such a good leader. And then, of course, at the end, Dalinar, his revelation is they don't need a fighter, they need a leader. And that was just such a good parallel in my mind. And I also wanted to mention briefly, like Adolin's leg, like he loses his leg and it's not coming back.
No.
I think that's really clear. He's not getting it back.
No, never.
And I think the way that Brandon handled it was done really delicately and it worked really well. For like a moment, I was really worried because Adolin is kind of walking around a lot, and the surgeon, I think, says that it's difficult for people to be able to do that, particularly when they first get the pegs put on.
And prosthetics.
But yeah, the prosthetics. But there's just like a few different lines that Brandon has that help put it all together. Like the fact that he's a duelist, the fact that they were able to use regrowth to a certain extent to get him to a point that others have to wait months for. And then the way it all comes together at the end in the Abidi fight, where he's losing. He's never going to win in the way that it's happening. But then he goes into the mode of like Zahel's training and finds that connection of, oh, the way that I trained works really well with the way that I am now and is a way that I can compensate for this disability. And I just think it was done really well in a way that was very respectful.
I really liked that with his leg, because there is a thing where it's like, oh yeah, we'll get a radiant to heal. And it really took me a bit, even at like the end of the book. It's like, oh, there's no Stormlight. That is just not possible. Like you are not going to Earth and getting like another another healer. Like that's just how it is.
And I think that like when it happened initially, and Adolin was like, "Oh, I'll get a like radiant healer, whatever." Like it's in my like live reactions. I was having mixed feelings about it because we've had this like issue of Brandon and disability rep and Stormlight and all that, and I was like, where is he gonna take this? And then it just turned out like Jess was saying, I think it really felt very like sensitive to it. Like I would imagine that one of the sensitivity readers has like personal experience for this because it felt like it. And I think like the whole Zahel training thing just worked perfectly for this. The duelist, the balance. I think Brandon handled it really well when I was like hesitant when it had just happened because of how we've seen Brandon handle these things before. I was like, where is he going with this? Yeah. And it turned out well, so I breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah, that was really good. David, you've been making me think about just like the stuff with the Spren and the Spren blades, because I also thought they were the Forgotten Spren. I did not think we were going to get not Radiance, like the Unoath at the end. It was like, how could you possibly guess that? Like that, it was just wild there that Brandon's like, yeah, let's have a new set of magic users, kind of, sort of. And they're the only shard bearers that can basically exist. This plate, you can't restore plate and you can't bond blades. And it's like, oh man, that's yikes. But also, I really liked the Adolin plot because it was very like Adolin's shard bearer, but not magic user, right? And so it felt very Way of Kings Words of Radiancy before like the magic like has gotten really crazy in the book, where it's like, yeah, this is kind of a low magic slugfest, and it's brutal. Like the Thunderclass fight is insane, and just so intense in losing the leg and things. So like I kind of liked the depoweredness. So I guess that's gonna be a little fun in back half because they have no Stormlight. So good luck, guys.
And it's like going into like Adolin being so skilled, just like raw talent, that BD just assumes that he must be radiant.
Yeah, that's
like,
great.
There's like no like, yeah, like there's an honor spread right over there. You're radiant, even though he never uses any abilities. Which like Abidia also just kind of sucks, but he's thousands of years old. Like he has some amount of experience.
Yeah. I mean, I thought you were referring to Abidia as a character sucking, but you know.
I mean, both.
Yeah. A little bit. I know. Yeah. I'll throw out a complaint. It's not an Adolin specific complaint, but it is related to the plotline. I am still to this day incredibly disappointed that the Taln fight fully occurred off screen. That, Brandon, I have read 5,500 pages for you at minimum, and I've loved most of them. But I have been promised a Herald going ham since page 1, and I really thought it was going to happen. And I respect everyone who thought the aftermath was cooler. It definitely wasn't. Would have loved to have seen him crushing some skulls. Like, yeah, disappointing on that end.
Yeah, I was slightly disappointed. You know, obviously I want to see Taln like actually fighting. So I was a bit disappointed in that. And then also, like, we didn't get to see Ash fight as well. Also would have been cool because she kind of hasn't done anything like at all so far. But I mean, I do agree that like it is just cool just coming and just seeing the absolute carnage of like the really cool imagery of Taln just atop a pile of corpses with like, you know, 11 spears through his chest or whatever. It feels very like cinematic, almost like to come back to just the absolute carnage and not actually see the battle. But I mean, I definitely still think it was cool, but I was a bit sad that we didn't actually get to see him fighting.
Yeah.
And hopefully we don't have to wait until like book 8 or 9 to actually see him fight.
Be his book.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
And also just him moving so fast that he just shatters the windows. It's so cool. And just the line of like, you know, Taln, the bearer of agonies, fought back is also just so peak.
I think the thing I like about the fight is less the fight and more just that in Adolin's POV, it feels so hopeless that the Fused are going out there and like they've lost the city, and just going back and seeing that, like, because I'm in Adolin's head and I really like Adolin's POV, like seeing that and be like, wait, we didn't lose? Like, what the hell happened? And then you see that, like, I think that's why it worked for me, of just like feeling the horrible dread that Adolin was feeling, that they just all lost and he's doomed. So
I really like the line that Ash says in the medical tent of effectively like, you idiots, you came for the common people. And that's the thing that triggered Taln to fight back, is like, his whole thing was protecting people. And yeah, that was kind of dumb of them. Though they didn't exactly know he was there.
No.
But
Like, it was they came for the wounded.
yeah.
And I just love like the moment of realization when Talon stands up and Abidi's just like,
I gotta get out of
oh
here.
boy, I
And,
messed up. Time to run.
and you know he booked it immediately. He just totally ran.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was kind of a coward because he ran away from multiple fights.
Oh yeah.
And he was powerful to an extent, but he really didn't want to fight a lot of the time because he knew he was going to lose.
Yep. He only wanted fights he could win.
It was kind of funny because before Wind and Truth, I'd always kind of been a proponent of, let's just take Taln, give him a shard blade, and just drop him in the middle of like a bunch of fuse, and just like, I feel like instincts would take in, and he would just absolutely destroy everyone.
Didn't
and then
even
that's
need the shard
basically what
blade
happened.
as it happened.
Yeah, with his bare hands, just, you know,
His bare hands.
ripping apart fused.
Okay.
All these fused.
And the fact that he had 11 spears through him, I think really points towards like the magical ability of the heralds as well. Like it's not one spear through you and you're dead. It's 11 spears on top of a pile of dead bodies.
Yeah.
He's going to be amazing when we finally see him fight on screen.
You know he's using the Atium stuff the entire time of that entire fight.
Yeah.
Like that nail was using.
He's not using any powers or a shard blade, and he's still just absolutely destroying fused.
Yep.
I was very happy about this chapter. Comes as a surprise to no one.
No, and I think that's part of why it worked that we don't actually see the fight yet, because we get all this whole thing like set up for the backup of like, this is what a herald can do when they are unchained. And sure, we kind of saw that with Ishar, but Ishar was like the magic side of like, this is what a herald can do when they're unchained. This was like the ground level, like this is what Talon can do. No magic, no powers, no shard blade. But he's a herald and he's the best fighter alive. Well, alive, however, cognitive shadows, whatever. And so I think it was a really good like setup for like what we can expect in the back half, like giving us a taste of it without like fully revealing it, because I mean Brandon played a lot of cards this book. He does kind of need to keep some things.
Yeah, I can see why David's upset.
5 other
though.
ginormous books that we have left.
Yeah,
I totally see it.
Yeah,
I absolutely get that point of view, but I think that's why it worked for me. Like, oh, this is going to be so cool when we get to it. And just like this tiniest taste of like what it's going to be like.
So I do just want to clarify, it's not that Talon has no powers. He doesn't use surge binding. He's absolutely using powers.
Yes.
Because that's not physically possible.
He's pretty fast. He's just fast.
He's just so fast he breaks the windows.
Yeah, there is a line about in the Tanavas flashbacks of like the heralds not just being empowered by honor, but being empowered by Roshar itself.
Sure, whatever that means.
But
okay.
I'm assuming that's tied into this.
Yeah. Okay, I don't even know what that means, but that's something for sure.
There's also the implication in one of the flashbacks where Rlain's using light weaving, and they come into the tent. They're like, "What are you doing? We're not meant to be using these." That they do still have access to their powers that they were given on Ashen, even before the Oath Pact.
They lost it in the Oath Pact.
Yeah, they lost those.
Oh, they lost them?
Yeah,
Okay.
Tanavas made them give it up, and then Tanavas was giving them back. It's a little unclear, but it seemed like they weren't restricted to just 2 surges, but then so they gave up their old powers, and then Tanavas specifically gave them the 2 powers, like for each. That's kind of
Okay.
my read for it. That like Honor's like restricting it in
Okay.
specific ways, but like it's unclear. But they lost their original powers and got new powers. That's for sure.
That makes the ending make a lot more
Okay.
sense in terms of the reforging of the Oath Pact. Because there's some line about the power of honor and the connection to honor. And like that's clear from them being in the Oath Pact, at least.
Mhm.
But that makes it a stronger thing, I think.
Yeah. Because they're the biggest part of Honor remaining. Yeah.
Mhm. I did like the little mentions of Harold's using like other powers. You know, like Wendell's like, I was pretty good at Else Calling too, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah. Which is
Mhm.
like, are they bitter that they haven't been able to use them for thousands of years? It's like, oh, that's pretty good.
there is a scene where, sorry, this is an aside, but like I think where like Shalash, when she kind of is like, and I'm next, you know, when they're like doing like the oath, like or they're swearing the oath back. I'm always like, I
Oh,
wonder
yeah,
if Batar
yeah.
was like, damn, like almost got light weaving, you know. Like,
That's really funny.
So I do have a question for all of you because I noticed something on my reread, and I don't know if it's actually a thing or not.
Okay.
But when they're getting to the palace after like it's been captured and everything, there's one point where it's Adolin and Zabra, and like they're getting noticed by a fused, and then the wind kind of like flips his like blanket cape thing and reveals his peg leg, and it's like, and that's kind of what like causes the fuse to dismiss them. Do we think that was just the wind, or do we think that was the capital W wind?
I think
Oh,
anything
number
that's,
two.
Yeah, there's
Ooh.
Number 2.
anything that wind ever does
Yeah.
that's relevant is I'm going to be suspicious
Capital
forever that it
W
is
wind.
capital W wind forever.
That's what I thought.
I'm going to disagree with everyone. I think that was just a coincidence.
Ooh.
I mean,
Cool.
it could be both. Like if it's lowercase wind, I wouldn't have a problem with it either. Just I think it's more likely that it's capital
Yeah.
W wind.
I think that like in like my mind, this is just, you know, this might not be borne out in what the text eventually says. Like, I don't know that like the wind is like sitting around like watching everything happening all the time and is like, oh, gotta blow the blanket off of Aiden's leg so you can see the peg leg. And it's more just like the wind exists and like the wind is supporting them, you know?
Mm.
Like,
Sure.
and so like it may not be consciously like doing all these things, but like maybe they'll just be like a little like a moment happens where like that's
Sure.
reflective of like the wind's overall will as opposed to
Sure.
them pulling strings. But
See, I'm thinking of it from a more meta outside of book perspective of it's meant to just be this moment of terror and tension that's being put in of, oh no, what if they're going to be discovered right now? So I just don't think that the wind is involved with that because it makes the idea of this being a like tension scene
Yeah.
less.
I totally see that and like somewhat agree. I just think Brandon could have done that in many ways.
Yes.
And Brandon chose when to do something.
So I noticed something with Yanaguan's story and with the story that Wit tells to Dalinar about Jarrett. Is that
Jarek.
his
Jarek.
name?
Yeah.
Jarek.
From
Thank you.
Dragonsteel. Dragonsteel Prime. Go listen to our Dragonsteel Prime episode, everyone. Yeah.
I have some notes that I'm just going to read through because I'm not going to remember this off the top of my head.
Okay.
But in the story, it's talking about how a commoner is raised to a higher status and the 3 challenges are he needs to be able to use a sword, military tactics, be on the same fighting level as the higher class. He needs to have learned the history of the Empire. And
Mhm.
then there's something about composing poetry.
Yep.
And there's an earlier scene when Yanaguan's first learning the shard plate where there's just this short snippet of Adolin saying, pretend they wrote a really terrible essay full of poetry. And then Geb goes, huh, poetry? There's prose and poetry. They're opposite or something. My wife talked about it. So if you tried to write an essay and filled it with poetry, you failed, right? And it just really jumped out when I heard the story that's just Yanaguan. That describes him to a T. But unlike in Hoyd's story where he runs away to the army, Yanaguan specifically stays and tries to fight. And it's just that alternate version at the end. And I found that fascinating.
That is interesting. I don't know if it's intentional, but that is fascinating.
Yeah. That is funny. I was just thinking of Dalinar too, where he he learns all this history. He's got the fight at the end, and then there's a poem that they find atop the tower that they don't know who wrote it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But I think yours is a stronger connection than that with Jareth and Commoner.
Yeah. Cool. I think now we got to talk about another highlight. Renarin and Rlain, the best boys here.
We're starting with the A plots, folks. This is what you came for.
Yeah, this. I think most people are gonna really like this. Like the Adolin stuff and the Renarin and Rlain stuff, and they saved the world from Mishram just totally killing everyone. So that's nice.
Killing all the humans.
Killing all the humans. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes.
Also, so far.
Maybe yes.
In the future.
Maybe in the future. For now,
she didn't really do anything yet.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Renarin and Rlain.
I think this was the best part of the book. This was my favorite plotline, and I think it had the best scenes out of everything. And I know that there's some really good scenes, but there's just these two scenes that really stuck out to me that were just better than everything else. There's the one, I think at the end of part 6, where Ba-Ado-Mishram finds them after Shallan's found her in the vision and is going to attack Shallan, and then Renarin and Rlain step in front of her, and it's specifically pointed out that they're holding hands.
Yep.
And then we get the entire flashback sequence in it's not a flashback, but in Yurthiru, with the idea of a singer and a human being in love, and just that connection moving forward through the centuries to now. And then we get to the end when she wants to kill Renarin, and Rlain's just said to be there protecting him and trying to point out all of the reasons of, no, you can't do this because this just keeps perpetuating things and it doesn't stop. And I've got chills just talking about it. I loved it so much. Also, I think they had just like the best emotional arcs in the book.
Yeah, I also really love Renarin and Rlain. I think that they're like this kind of them coming to terms with them having feelings with each other and kind of acting on them is one of the better romances Brandon has written.
Yeah, I'd agree for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I can't put it above Adolin personally.
That's fair.
Because Renarin and Rlain are also tied into a bunch of, like, they're tied into Shallan's arc, they're tied into Ba-Ado-Mishram. They're just, like, tied into a lot of other things that are bringing them down. It's harshing their mellow, whereas Adolin kind of is able to stand on his own and is not bogged down by other less good parts.
Sure. Yeah, I was worried when Brandon said that, book 5 is going to have Renarin and Rlain stuff. I'm like, but there's so much to do in book 5. And Brandon made it work. Like he didn't make it feel like we were just doing it for gay romance. Like it was very impactful for the characters. It was impactful for the plot. Mishram would have murdered a lot of humans if they hadn't done it. And it really connected thematically with a lot of things. So I think this is kind of the best version that you could have of that.
The fact that he Like, this is the biggest queer relationship that he's had
Mhm.
in the books, like of
Yes.
any of his books. Like, it's the most at the forefront, and he made it so natural. Like, it doesn't stand out as I
Mhm.
needed to put representation in my books, which, I mean, good, put representation in books, but make it part of the story and make it feel like it just naturally exists. Otherwise, it does feel shoehorned in, and it didn't feel like that. And that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a checkbox. It's like an integral part of the story, which
Yeah,
I really
very
like.
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really glad that, like, when Brandon said, like, in that WoB, like, we're getting Renarin and Rlain stuff this book, like, on top of all the other things he had to do, I was like, I didn't know how far it would go and if most of the, like, relationship development would happen in the time skip. And I think I was kind of afraid of that, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Brandon writing romance, he prefers established romances rather than like writing something like from scratch and like seeing that development. Like, you can tell that the romances that already exist in the series and that are already established are generally smoother than the ones that like start in the book and like continue. So I was like hesitant. I was like, is Brandon just gonna leave this for the time skip and how that would undermine their story? And he didn't, and it worked really well. And I think that this is like, we're in a place where it's good enough that, like, sure, they will like evolve and be more comfortable with each other like during the time skip, but it is not the entire development of this romance and this relationship and them like coming to terms with it like during that space. Like, it's got its own moment. It like Brandon let it breathe enough so that we don't have to worry about it like just coming out of nowhere in the book 6, like, oh, Renarin and Rlain are an established couple, which I think I was a bit afraid of.
Yeah.
That would have been bad. That would have been so
That
bad.
would have been really bad. Yeah.
It would have been bad.
Yeah.
It was like nice that there was, I mean, there wasn't a lot, but there was at least like a little bit of foreshadowing in Rhythm of 4, so it wasn't like super out of the blue.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, I
It was
think part of
definitely
that is,
there.
like,
Yeah, for sure.
There were like a lot of other things that went in Truth that were very much like sudden with no foreshadowing in the other books. I'm glad it was not like that with this one.
No.
Yeah. No,
AVR.
I definitely. Oh my God! Don't. You're just picking all the things that I'm mad about. No, that was a small one. No, I really liked it. I think that the other scene that we haven't called out that I think probably gets forgotten because it was in the preview chapters was the Dre scene. I really liked that.
Yeah, true.
Early on, just to kind of set him down the trajectory he was going to go on. And I think like the sense I get from Brandon and Wobbs and like interviews and stuff is just that, you know, he's hesitant about doing some of the, you know, about bringing in some of like, you know, non-straight relationships. And I feel like the takeaway from this is don't be like, you know, you got it. You did a good job. Like, keep it coming. You know, don't worry about it. And just try to keep the same or better quality of listening to folks. And I think he'll be in a good spot.
I think he's always like, I want to make it fit really well with the story and not feel shoehorned in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that the other thing from this chapter that this POV, I should say, not this chapter, that I can see Renarin as a future main character a lot more clearly than I could before this
absolutely.
book.
He did a really good setup for Renarin's character. Certainly on a reread, if you read those Renarin visions, just go reread those, because they're one of the windows is just the postlude. Check that out, guys. It's just straight up the postlude, but also just like Renarin, the general, like Rlain saying, "Oh, I want to be like an emissary to the singers and things." That's like that's going to be really interesting and cool, and I'm really excited to see Renarin be main character status, where he's confident and awesome, and also like he's got a lot of magic stuff to explore, so that's going to be really interesting, I think, for sure.
I think also going into his book, there's going to be a really nice contrast between Renarin as he currently is and confidence and has overcome a lot of things versus his flashbacks where he's really struggling.
Oh, that will be a really good dichotomy. Yeah, I think that's going to work really well. Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about moving into the spiritual realm with Renarin and Rlain, of course, but we have Dalinar and Navani. And Dalinar, you know, he's he's only learning the entire history of Roshar and Ashen stuff. Okay, insane. All right. Like just not only just all of the spiritual realm visions where it's like we see the humans come to Ashen, the Oath Pact, just the Recreants. I have some Recreants thoughts too. But
the Arietiam.
Yeah, just all those. But then it's like day 9 characters. Tanavas is like, okay, we're just doing this in small caps.
And the fact that the first Tanavas chapter is chapter 100,
titled
10
God,
the holiest of
Yes. A+ on
Nice.
getting those chapters to work out that way. But
good.
and all the Tanavas
And, like,
flashbacks
you-
just being small caps the entire time, except in dialogue with normal people.
Small caps.
Hilarious.
You see that's like purely night, and from then on to the end of the book, there is no stopping. Which is why Will and I stayed up to like 4 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
finishing
once you
and then
hit there.
decompressing.
Because day 9 and day 10 are long. Very long.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you guys think of Visions and Dalinar stuff and Navani stuff? There's we're gonna do whole episodes. I think one of the episodes we do is the
Yes.
true history of Roshar, because we have a lot of answers now, and we're gonna talk about them. So
There's a lot, but one of my favorite scenes was just the scene of all the heralds and Honor approaching Taln, and
Yes.
Honor offering him immortality, and Taln's just like, no, I wish I had my weapon so I could stab you right now, and initially just refusing, but then also like realizing that someone else is going to have to do it anyway. It's going to be a big burden, and only then does he agree to take it on. I feel like
that was a
really,
great town
like,
moment.
and it also just exemplifies the oaths of the stone wards of I will be there when I'm needed type stuff, because that's like very clearly kind of like what he's embodying in that scene. So that was really great. Also, the whole him trying to kill cultivation. That was something.
Sure.
Just casually popped that in there. I was like, what?
Yeah, the Taln flashback book definitely is rising in interest.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like, okay, we're just gonna do a line about that. Like, yeah, we'll speculate on that.
What I am about to say will come as a surprise to no one.
Okay.
Navani is so cool.
I love Navani leaving the spiritual realm. Like those were really
Yes.
good. I love those.
Yeah, it's like the whole her learning to how to manipulate the visions of like her kind of
Science.
not acting in character, but with the conversation with Gavilar of nope, he never hits me, and the vision resets. Nope, he didn't know that thing, and then shifting that into Elakar's death.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
That was so good.
that was so cool. But also there was a line earlier. It's when they first get to Earth Yuru, where she's starting to science the creme out of these visions. Dalinar says something, and Navani's response is understanding the nature of the divine is the entire point of science. And I just loved that so much.
I felt like this book showed that Navani is definitely a better bondsmith than Dalinar. She is much better suited for these powers.
That's actually
Dalinar,
probably true.
Dalinar maybe fits the oath, but Navani's I'm the one who's gonna figure out how to actually do stuff with these powers. Dalinar, you're a little bit of a blunt instrument.
Yes.
And I also liked she also embodies the pious quality of bondsmiths. Is she is very religious. She's married to a very huge heretic and has a daughter who is a heretic, and that doesn't affect her faith. She's still trying to figure out how all these
Great.
truths of the world that she is learning interact with what she knows. But it's Navani, wonderful character.
Also, can we appreciate Navani, scientist, just earth gating it up and giving us all the information that she could on how else calling works?
Oh yes.
Watching
my God,
Shard be
yes.
how is he doing this? I need to get the science for the readers.
Yes. The
I
giant
love
gate.
that chapter.
Yeah.
The whole first vision where we see the Ashenites come through and the description of how the sky is on fire.
Oh my
It's just
God.
so good.
So good.
Yeah, it's just so good. With Dalinar, he finally learns about his brother. Like,
Yeah.
he finally learns
Oh,
what
I
he
wish
was
it had
like to
teeny bit over
Navani through. And I think the way Brandon tied it into Taravangian trying to break him with these awful things worked really well. Like, that was a really good place to add it into the narrative, because Dalinar had to find out. He needed to know who Gavilar really was. So that just worked really, really well. And speaking of terrible people, I loved that that Tanavast was not a good person.
Yes.
I love that everyone worships the Almighty, thinks the Almighty is just the top dog, best person. And then Tanavast, not good. Like, from the beginning, he is like self-centered and arrogant. And it changes over time. But yeah, he was not the good person that people thought of at all. And then we get the Recreant scene, and he's just cold and wanting to get rid of these people that he put in place to do the thing because they can't do the thing anymore.
Do you mean the Aritium scene or the Recreant scene?
Oh yeah, I'm mixing them up. Yeah, the Ariatium.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, we do. He is involved in the Recreants as well.
Yeah, he's involved in everything here. We're gonna have an honor episode as well, guys. Don't worry.
The power was 100% correct to reject him for that. I fully
absolutely
believe that. He made an awful decision in what he did, and there was no way to justify it.
Kind of deserved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I also thought it was funny how bad Honor is at naming things, because it should have been obvious in retrospect, but Ashen, just being called Ashen because it's, it's Ash, it's Ashen.
Yes, the planet.
And then also Rays just being named after Rays.
Yep.
That also should have been obvious in retrospect, but that also surprised me.
As
Tanavast sucks at naming things.
He's a common guy. He's not here to name cool things. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call myself a Tanavast apologist. I don't think he's as bad as I'm not on board with Jessie. I think he was a poor fit for Honor, perhaps. But I do think there is a moral core to Tanavast.
Sure.
That he doesn't always live up to. And
I would agree with that.
And he didn't always, because there were points where the power of Honor resisted him and he pushed it back down, and then there are some times where he just went along with it. He was bad at deciding which of those two he should do. But yeah, betraying Ba-Ado-Mishram, definitely the wrong thing to do.
Especially the way he did it. That was the worst way to do it.
I've got a lot of fondness for Tanavast. I think probably because of his failings, just because, and I could struggle to imagine myself doing a better job at all. So I'm just sometimes, sometimes you're Odium is bad, guys, and I'm not gonna make the right decisions, but I'm gonna try. Cultivation was a little bit too hands off for me, so I don't think either of them quite got the balance right. She did not have a good plan, we can say, ultimately, I would say, but
one backup plan.
But one backup plan. Just other kind of broad thoughts. I really like Navani in this. I am frustrated with how her ending was. I did not like that she ended up frozen in carbonate.
That was a weird choice for sure. Yeah,
I felt like she just got put in stasis for the back half, and I'm so annoyed that there's the moment where the sibling is it's retribution. He's coming for us, Navani. It's our will against him. And I'm oh yeah, let's see it. And then it's next scene, frozen. And I'm oh, well.
And it's also it doesn't the new Oath Pact protect the Spren? I don't know. I guess the sibling didn't know that.
The sibling doesn't know about the new Oath Pact, though.
But if that's the answer, then I'm well, that's disappointing that you went into a coma because you didn't realize you didn't need to go into safe mode.
Hopefully I love she'll be back relatively soon.
Dalinar, for me in this book, I liked him. I'm not really compelled by like character arcs that are like you need to like take your hands off the wheel and let other people drive, because that just doesn't really. I'm very willing to do that personally. So I'm always like, yeah, duh, like let other people get involved.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So it just doesn't click for me so much. But I think ultimately like it made sense and it worked pretty well. There are parts that I wish I loved the visions and I hate them because they were it limited what they were doing and where they were at times. You know, like they kind of have to just be there to watch the visions and they don't get to make as many independent choices of their own in the same way like Shallan and company get to in the background. But I thought that was pretty good. And I will say the second that Gavinor went into the spiritual realm, I was very anxious that what ended up happening would happen. And in fact, it did. Gavinor did turn into an adult man and Odium's champion. And while I was very opposed to Child Champion, I think this was about as well as it could have been done, and I enjoyed how it was how it ended up working out.
Yeah, like the twist of it being adult Gavinor, because hey, everybody knows about the child champion theory. As soon as Gavin shows up in the spiritual realm, you know child champion is going to be in there. But there's the fake out when you think he got out safe. And then adult Gavinor shows
and
up.
And then fake out with Elhokar. It's like, wait, what the hell's happening? Yeah, right.
What? Yes. I screamed. I was like, what in the world is going on here? Elhokar? I thought this was going to go somewhere else entirely. And
that caught me so off guard.
I think this is also really relevant with that death rattle that really kicked off the child champion theory, because it talks about a suckling babe in it. And it ties into the whole, the future is not completely set. So bits and pieces of the death rattles might not always be completely correct. Yeah. It still follows the spirit of the death rattle, even if it's not to the letter of the death rattle.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because I don't think we've really seen, I guess I've seen it that one time with the death rattle about two men bringing the gemstone out of the chasm. Yeah, and it was a man and a woman in the end.
Well, but and like Sigzil.
This one's bigger.
Yeah, like that just didn't happen. I guess it could happen in back half, admittedly. But I mean, Sigzil's nowhere on Roshar, so probably not, though, right?
Yeah,
that is a good point. But there's like also like the meta perspective of like, we're not getting all of the death rattles. We're just getting the specific ones Brandon wants us to know, and like, so it's more likely he would pick ones that are actually relevant.
Yeah, that's probably true. He did a lot of Death Rattle chapter titles, for sure. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing now. Yeah. All right. The Death Rattle / list thing with unknown meanings is going to be filled out real nice here.
I wonder how many don't seem to be resolved. That'll be interesting to see.
Oh,
which ones
I think we got to do an episode on that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like Death Rattle, because we did an episode on the Death Rattles initially. Like when, like one of the first Shardcast episodes was Death Rattles. So it would be fun to like look at that again.
We will. We got stuff to do.
You know how like a lot of the discussion like before this book, and especially like with the preview chapters with like all the death flags for like half the cast flying.
Yes, true.
Everybody like, okay, who's gonna die from our cast?
Yes.
I was thinking like Kaladin can't die. It would be antithetical to his whole arc. We've talked about this in Day 1 preview chapters. Adolin, I didn't feel like he could die, but I was like legitimately scared.
Sure.
And I think out of all of them, Dalinar's arc is the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah. For
like why he was the one that actually ended up dying. But like we still have the whole like fuse like Blackthorn thing apart from that. But like Dalinar as a character dying, I think it like really made sense. Like, not only because of the gambit he pulled off of like ascending to honor and then renouncing his oaths and like pushing Roshar in this like whole new direction. But Dalinar, like he grew like a lot and he didn't even get through all of his oaths like as a bondsmith.
Nope.
But I felt that Dalinar was like stagnating a little bit as a character, and not in a way of like stagnating of like complete character, like he can go off and live a happy life. Like I think Dalinar as a character like overshadows so much and like has this like necessity of like control and like I have to do everything.
Yeah.
That having him in the back half just wouldn't have worked narratively to like give the other characters freedom to do things. Because like Kaladin is around a lot and Kaladin overshadows things in his own way. But Kaladin doesn't have this overwhelming sense of like, I have to do everything. Kaladin is more like contained to like, well, I need to protect everyone, but like in his like little sphere. Dalinar has this more like encompassing sense of like, I need to be in charge of everything. And so I think that Dalinar dying like made a lot of sense here. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this big thing. I'm gonna push Roshar into like derail it a whole new direction, like change up this whole cycle. And then he was done. Like he didn't really need to do like much else. Would I have liked that he was able to talk with Navani about the Gavilar and like, oh, I realized this thing. Like, I'm so sorry, I doubted you. Yes. But like that's literally just it. I didn't know where else Dalinar could go after this.
He was always gonna, he had to die.
Dalinar was always gonna die. He was always the most logical choice here.
From a meta perspective as well, we had to kind of take out all of our major characters so that the back half wasn't overshadowed by them, like you said. Like Kaladin's gone. Sorry, who else is that? Kaladin's gone, Dalinar's gone, Navani's frozen, Shallan's stuck in Shadesmar. She's probably the only one that we might get stuff from in book 6. And even then, it might still be pushed back because she's off doing her own stuff that's completely separate to the rest of the cast now. And it was necessary to take them all out so that the other characters could take center stage. Because otherwise, there's no way to have those characters in book 6 and just have them in the background. It just wouldn't work. I also just wanted to clarify from earlier, I love what happened with Tanavas' storyline. Like, I love him as a character now because he was made to be really human. And he was humanized. And that's what I like about him having these flaws now. But I just wanted to clarify, I don't think he's evil or anything or like a really bad person. I think he's human and he has good traits and bad traits. And it's similar in a way to like Taravangian having the logical side and the emotional side and how these can both be good or bad. And that's what altogether makes him feel like a real character.
The best part of Tanavast is that he's a dog person.
Yeah, I was kind of.
And also, it's so sad that dogs made it to Roshar and then they all died. That's so sad.
He could have stopped that.
Yeah.
Why didn't he stop it? He just feel like, hey, dogs, there you go. There's some Jedi diversity.
That's interesting.
I think they needed to adapt to the environment, though, so it was probably an evolutionary thing to do with the outside pressures.
It's specifically like not enough made it to make a stable breeding population.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so much cooler if it's evolution, though.
No, that's they did say that. One Tanavas thing about the Recreants. I know we had a long Ba-Ado-Mishram in the Recreants podcast, and I know we were like struggling. How do all the Radiants know about this truth for them to break the oath and synchronize it? Like, oh, well, God just talks to them all. I'm like, oh, that solves the problem. It's like we never considered that as an option.
No. He doesn't talk to all of them. He blasts a nightmare into their brains and then doesn't explain himself.
No explanation. Yeah, so divine edict to really sync up the timeline. Great work. That solves my issue completely that we were talking about. So thanks for that.
I do have an issue with that scene because there are still other humans there. Why didn't they go back to Irithiru and tell people what Malishi had done? I just don't understand why that didn't continue down through history. Like, Malishi is seen as a good person as far as we can tell in the Gemstone archives. Like, he's not portrayed as this person who betrayed us all. And I don't quite understand why that is the case.
I think they've left Irithiru and the Gemstone archive is closed. Yeah, like they don't have anything after. The city's already been abandoned.
And like I think the Oath Gates are locked too. Like
almost all of them.
Almost all of them. Anyway, I just like that timeline thing. That was good.
No, it was good. There are a ton of like characters from the epigraphs that are sprinkled into
They're
those
in
scenes
there.
too. Like there's like little names, you know. So it is some
Still
fun
don't
stuff in there.
Really know why Feverstone mattered, but okay, whatever. It was near there, so sure, we're great.
We get another hint about it.
Great.
And there's also that recreant scene of Ba-Ado-Mishram getting slurped up into the gemstone, and then the immediate body horror of what happens to all of the singers.
That was terrifying.
One of the most
it was so
horrific things I
Yeah.
ever read.
Yeah.
And it's awful, but it's like, it's such a well-written,
Good scene.
like,
Yeah.
sequence. Like, it's a train wreck. You can't help but continue reading. It's
It
just
needs to be horrifying, right? Like it does.
Yeah. There's a small thing with Renarin that I thought was really cool, that I don't know if this ties into the fact that Syanat has affected his friend or something else with his ability to like see the future, but I think it shows a little bit more about how he's connected to the spiritual realm, because he seems to connect with the human from the past, and the human in the past
Oh yeah,
sees
that's true.
him,
That did
and
happen.
Renarin's
Yeah.
like, I will help fix this.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that was really good.
really interesting.
That was really good.
Had
That's some
forgotten
weird-
about that, yeah.
Renarin Truth Watcher, but also enlightened Truth Watcher BS going on, and I'm here for it.
On Child Champion, I think that I really hope we get like more Gavinor like in the backup, and that Brandon doesn't drop that thread.
Yeah.
Like even if we don't get that novella that all of us want,
You're
I
not
really
getting
want
the
to like get an
novella.
exploration of his
0%.
character, because
There's absolutely no way there's going to be a novella. No way.
but at least like get like his POV in the backpack and explore that, because it's such a different dynamic. And like throughout this whole book, I was like, oh, this poor kid, like constantly he's traumatized. Like everybody else is like paying attention to other things because like saving the world is more urgent. And going into the spiritual realm, just like even before the whole like Odium training arc thing, the spiritual realm is traumatizing enough if you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And so
Rough.
I really, really hope Brandon doesn't drop that thread in the back half, because Gavinor has the potential to be one of the most interesting characters in the entire series.
Absolutely.
Seth thinks he had a bad childhood.
One last thing. Sorry, Stormfaker fans. He was the Stormfather. He did have Tanavest memory, though, so it's a little more complicated. But it was not Ishar in the prologue. Sorry, guys. It was the Stormfather. Stormfather's just a dirty liar, and he was lying a lot, actually. So
Ishar was trying to be an unmade, not the Stormfather.
We'll get to that very soon. Very soon. And speaking of the other, let's say, cultural zeitgeist around the prologue, along with Stormfather and Stormfaker, is Chana Devar. And so we should talk about Shallan a little bit. So what did you guys think about Chana Devar?
I was 100% on board as soon as we got that prologue. Like, when I read it, I didn't see the vision until someone else pointed it out. And then I was like, yes, I don't care what Brandon writes in the book. Like, Chana Devar is true.
Yeah, and one other thing I liked is it was kind of mixed in with that is that we actually got to see Shallan's wedding.
Yeah,
which I thought was
we got the
I hadn't
wedding.
seen that before.
Like,
That's
that we finally
crazy,
get to see
yeah.
it, which is really sweet.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
dragons
Now,
finally makes
the
more
wedding.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like World Hopper Ball being Shallan's wedding. Like, yeah.
It's in the book.
And I
And there was
bet there's gonna be some like Chana character. I think she will. Like,
I think
even
she
if it's
will,
not
yeah.
like excessively obvious, I think she'll be there.
Those of you watching this may already know.
You will know.
Like, with-
You will know.
I think the characters that will be at the ball will be very obviously dressed as these were meant to be characters from the book, and they will stand out from everyone who is doing cosplay.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna really go ham into trying to make them very obvious. But it makes a lot more sense now why we did not get that scene back in Oathbringer if Chana Devar was in the scene and we had to have Shallan and her mother actually interact from the scene. I have never liked the Chana Devar theory.
You're a hater.
I have always been a Chana Devar hater. I picked up on it happening immediately. And then I got to the ending, and now I love it.
Yeah.
Brandon
Hell yeah.
nailed that ending so well. Just the childhood scene was so upsetting to read, but it also was so cathartic in the way that I think he was meant to have for Shallan in the book, but also as a reader, like, oh, we're finally getting like that big mystery that we've been wondering about. But then to have the end of that scene be like, oh, she was at my wedding. You know the next scene has got to be the wedding.
Yeah, it's wild.
And the confrontation that they have, and Shallan realizes that she's the adult in the room. God, I want to see art of that. I think it's going to make like a really good piece of art.
The thing I liked about that is because like, Shallan like goes to the wedding so that she can experience it, which was all very good. And then like she deviates from history and like actually goes to confront her mother. And then she figures out like, oh no, I'm not just like confronting my mother in this vision. My mother, the Herald, also got pulled into this vision, and I'm talking to the real her. Was like, that was so good.
Like, I didn't like the theory. I only came around to it like post prologue reading, and like I'm like with Jessie, like it worked so well because I mean we've always had the same like the Shallan Matryoshka, like there's endless secrets and endless secrets and endless secrets. And this one, like, it felt like it landed like in such a satisfying way because of that like confrontation. It wasn't only like Shallan, like, oh, Chana's my mother. She was able to talk to her and like the real Chana. I think it landed so well because of how cathartic it was. It wasn't just, oh, I did this, which is more like of a like shock value type thing, which I think, I mean, not in hindsight, but originally was kind of like the problem people had with like, oh, Shallan killed her mother, Shallan killed her father, Shallan killed her spren. And like, yes, there were like emotional moments, but I think this really tied it together. And I think that going back and reading all of those, it's going to make it like hit much better now that we know.
I think it's going to be good.
I think it ended up being helpful that Brandon, at least in my perspective, like for the fans who knew that this was a possibility, it was out there immediately. Like you're like, yep, this seems like this is the case. Like there wasn't like it wasn't treated like a grand reveal.
No.
Yeah.
Too much. Like you were like, oh, like some people are going to know about this and it's going to be a surprise for some. So I think that ended up clicking pretty well. I really liked, like, thank God, another female Herald. It was great to kind of see her perspective.
That was very interesting, actually.
Trying to be better. Like she'd gone back to Ashen to look for Taln.
Yeah,
like she really was crazy. Like, I should be brave, but yeah. Well, it's really cool. It was nice to get a sense of her there.
Very interesting.
Just a step in the direction of just Shallan more generally. Like I thought it was a really good plot. Shallan had a great arc this one. I loved her interactions with Mraize and kind of how that all wrapped really up. Fun. So yeah, pretty solid Shallan book.
There's the one thing in the flashback scene when she's a child that you stop and think about, and wow, this is horrifying. Chana was trying to replace herself as a herald with her daughter.
Why? That's terrifying. Yeah, yikes.
And the fact that all of her children were affected by her magical issues as well, and it enhanced them. Oh man, that was horrifying. A revelation.
Oof.
One other thing about Shallan's arc is that when I was first reading it and Formless was back, I was so frustrated.
Yeah, same.
Because like, Brandon, it's been like 2 days. Why is Formless back? Because like there were also like some other things where like it felt like Brandon thought more time had passed. I'm like, no, it's been 2 days. Why is this? So the reveal at the end that it was Yaddle all along was like, it immediately flipped it. I'm like, I actually love this now. I'm so really glad you did this. Because like it does completely change that plot arc for me.
I think it helps as well that we get a lot of conversations between Shallan and Radiant, and I think there's even a couple between Shallan and Vale, where Shallan is in the driver's seat and having to explain to them that no, she's not immediately better. She's still going to have problems that she has to surpass, but that she's strong enough to now do it by herself. And I think that helps a lot with the Formless plot and with her mother's plot.
I just wanted to say, I definitely was in the same boat of like, as soon as Formless appeared, I was mildly upset because I was like, why is this? It seemed like very out of the blue, just like, oh yep, she's back. And there's one of those things that in hindsight, it should have been very obvious. And the moment, those are my favorite reveals when it like, as soon as you know it, it's instantly obvious. But I mean, I do think with some of the reveals is like, because I read it so fast, then I probably didn't have enough time to like process, and maybe if I read it slower, then I would have picked up on it. But it definitely took me by surprise, which I appreciated. But I am curious to see people who read it slower if they will pick up on more stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's talk about the main character, Kaladin. Kaladin and Shinovar. We're good over 2 hours in. Let's talk about the main character, Kaladin.
Yeah.
Can I go?
Go
I go?
for it.
I want to.
Yes. Unleash.
I have to eat crow. Like I have to, which is there were 3 things in this book that I did not want to have happen. We've talked about 2 of them already.
Okay.
And I was wrong about 2 of them. And I was also wrong about the 3rd one, which is I really did not want Silladin to start happening. And I think that it worked very well. I thought it was awesome. I thought they did a good job. I felt like Rhythm of War, Brandon was seeding this, even though it kind of didn't feel like it. I was like, if he's going to have Kaladin relationship, this is the book where we need to start setting it up. There's exactly one woman who's a candidate based on this book. So this is where it's going to go. And I was kind of hesitant, and I feel like he kind of laid it on a little strong sometimes, and then we didn't quite get to like a resolution, which makes me nervous that he will do it when we don't see them.
Yeah.
Which I really hope he doesn't do. But all the romantic elements that he got in there, like the dance and like, some of the fun flute stuff, I liked.
I wasn't super strongly opposed to Silladin to begin with. I definitely wasn't a big fan of it. And I was even less a fan of it after the library scene.
That was a bad scene.
That whole chapter. Then I really, really enjoyed the dance kata scene.
Was so good.
That was one of my favorite scenes, at least for Kaladin. It was really well written, and I just like the imagery was like really beautiful of like, her changing between like, human form and spear form, which is like, that was just really cool.
Yeah, I just have to reiterate, I was very anti-Silladin.
Whoa.
I'm like, no, this is weird. We haven't been talking about beta feedback. I put it in my beta feedback that I did not like Silladin. And then we got that stupid dance scene. I'm like, oh no, this was actually kind of cute. Oh no.
Xavier.
And so like, I definitely think Brandon lays it on too thick at the beginning.
Yes.
And then it kind of fades away to nothing towards the end.
Yeah.
I'm glad like nothing happened in this book. But I like that, like, there's a trajectory here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with David. I don't want this to happen off screen.
Yeah, I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
I agree basically with what Ian and David both said, in that I did not like Silladin very much at all, because I just didn't think it would work. Like, I didn't hate the idea. I was just like, this is not something that I can see ever being pulled off. And then he pulled it off with that dance scene. It was so good.
It was good.
And like, it really flipped it for me. I 100% think this is happening off screen. Like, we've got a 10-year time jump. I cannot see nothing happening in 10 years. And that really frustrates me, because this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is the like cutting out the middle bits of relationships and conflicts and stuff. And it's happened over and over and over again. And I think we're getting it with this, and I think we're getting it with something else, but I will talk about that a little bit later.
If it's any consolation, it's only going to be a couple months for Kaladin and Syl.
That's actually a
Because
really
they're
interesting
in
point.
like the Herald vision.
Okay, yeah, they did
where-
specifically say that. That's a good point.
Mhm.
Okay.
And like a huge thing for me is Kaladin becoming a herald completely changes the dynamic. And I'm like, yeah, this works. Like,
Yeah,
he's
because
not
now
a
they're both
flesh
immortal.
human. He's-
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, true.
Mhm.
Like everyone else, I wasn't a very big fan of like Silladin like as a concept, and I do think Brandon like laid it on too thick at the beginning. I like the arc and the way it actually went in the book in terms of like Brandon didn't go too hard on it. I felt at the beginning in the previews that it was kind of like it felt forced, like a bit too much. The way it actually turned out didn't feel that way, especially like with the dance scene and all that. It didn't feel like from 0 to 100, which is what I was feeling in the previews. If it's smooth, it was going to be fine. It felt so abrupt to me when we started getting those scenes, and like that was the real problem I had with it. But I think that the way it is, the fact that Kaladin is immortal and that you're not going to get like that 10-year jump, but like a smaller one. I think that makes it like good enough. Hopefully Brandon, like because of Kaladin's like different place as a character in the back half, will be able to like continue like that like smooth progression instead of just coming out of nowhere. So I'm fine with it now, but I was really against it at the beginning. And
Yeah, it was with Syl. One thing I liked was kind of her getting a little more of her own character arc. Of her kind of going like, I'm not just living for Kaladin, like I need to learn to like, live for myself too. And her going like, I've started like writing a journal, which I hope at some point we get to read Syl's journal, because I feel like that would be very entertaining.
Yeah,
But
that would
I feel
be
like
good.
I feel like it's like kind of a general thing in this book of, I feel like a lot of Spren kind of got their personalities like more developed. Like we got a lot more personality from Maya,
Yes.
which is really nice.
Yes.
And kind of throughout the book, we kind of get more of Zeth Spren. Was it 1, 2,
1, 2, 1, 2, 4.
I believe his
One,
name
two,
is
one,
Ox. Obviously.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
It's much
let's just
easier
say
to-
Ox. I
yeah.
think that's easier.
Yeah.
And with Ox, like to begin with, I did not like him whatsoever, because like they touch down in Shinovar, and I forget the exact interaction, but he basically says to Zeth like, no, you're not allowed to be happy. You're not here to be happy or to reminisce. You're here to, accomplish your task. Just kind of like, being kind of like a bad Spren type thing. And then later on, him coming to Kaladin, and he's like, give me some of this therapy stuff I've been hearing about. Like, I want to actually be able to help Zeth, and kind of getting that kind of like mini character arc was really nice. And then it's also just so sad when he's like finally wanting to help Zeth, and Zeth's like, nah, we should break up.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
I loved the scene like in Shadesmar when like Seth is like fighting Posen and the Edge Dancer honor bearer, and it gets revealed that 12124 is just a wet noodle of a
It was
person.
great. It was really good, actually.
And it's like, because like
Like,
Seth has the
true.
line about like,
Yep.
hey, if you're living a lie, don't let the people you're duping find out. You lose all credibility. And it's like one of the most like sassiest lines Seth has, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I love this
It's
side of you,
perfect.
Seth. Give me more.
We got some good sides of Zeth here. That's a little more fleshed out, which I liked a lot.
And also one quick comment on that Shadesmar scene. I love that we finally got that like Nightblood just envisions himself as like this
Yes.
radiant sword of like
amazing,
pure light.
Holy crap!
So good.
Which is funny because Brandon's been like it's probably been asked like 4 times what Nightblood looks like in Shadesmar,
And
Brandon's
also
always
maybe
raffed it.
Nightblood's true name, because Nightblood isn't its true
Yeah.
name, right?
Right.
Mhm.
It was cool to get to finally actually get to see that.
I liked the stuff with Nightblood in Shadesmar. I thought that was really cool and a great way to end that battle. I'm so frustrated at the point of the book that we get that scene in, because we know nothing about Posen at all.
Yep.
He is a random person that Zeth apparently does not like, and that's all we know. And then we get all of the flashback sequence of how crappy Posen actually is to him. And I just wish we had the Elscola Monastery later in the book and had the Shadesmar sequence after we knew stuff from Zeth's past. I think it would have worked so much better. And I don't think there was any reason that they had to go to the Elscholar Monastery when they actually did. Like, I think it could have actually just been later.
Mm-hmm.
Except like they are doing the monasteries like in reverse order. Like,
But then
they are in
are they?
sequence. Yeah, because they start with stone wards, then they go to Bill Shapers, which is
Will
Civi,
Shaper.
who is also like, we see her dead before we find out she's actually
Yeah,
kind of
it's
cool.
a little weird.
Then it's Elscholar. Oh, yeah.
But you get Edge Dancer in there. Like, he skips. Like, he's not
Like-
not committed to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he
But,
didn't
like,
have to
that's
do it
not,
this
like,
way.
part of like he's going to things earlier. Some are jumping ahead and double timing.
But it didn't have to be that way. You know, he could have written it in a completely arbitrary order. Like, it wasn't, like, you know what I mean? Like, this wasn't
Yes.
a necessary detail that they're going in reverse order. They could have gone in any
Yeah.
order.
I mean,
No,
I like that they
I definitely
were going
agree.
in a specific order.
I think
But like
that's, yeah.
at the cost of the story, you know,
Yeah.
like at the cost
I
of
also
knowing who these characters
don't-
he's fighting are.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah,
you
I
could have
felt
shoved like the flashbacks earlier.
Mm.
I think
I-
that would have
yeah.
been a better fix than
Yeah, I
that would have worked
strongly-
as well.
I strongly agree with Jess in that I felt like the flashbacks were completely misaligned with what was happening in present day, and
Mhm.
so it just to me did not connect who we were fighting. Like, well, why don't we get his best buddy, what's his face, early? You know, the light weaving guy. You know, I
Oh,
can't remember
Moss.
his name, but
Moss.
yeah, Moss. Like, get some of the nobodies out there so we can learn about CV, so we can learn about Posen,
Mm.
and like it means something when we fight
Mhm.
them.
I think the only one that really hit was Elid. Like that was a really interesting one because we did the groundwork with their character relationship. Like that fight was really good.
Mhm.
I didn't mind the Posen stuff, but definitely have, as Jess has told me about this extensively. I was like, yeah, it is. It's a little weird. Like, it worked for me. And also, I'll go with
Mhm.
David. Yeah, we didn't have to do the monasteries in this order. I mean, we didn't have to do any of this plotline the way it is, but that's the way we're doing this plotline, and it's going to be
Yeah,
boss
only.
battles, and like that's not exactly what I expected this plotline to be. But yeah, interesting.
No, my concept of cleansing Shinovar was just not this book. Like, that's my
No,
biggest complaint
It
with
is
this
sure.
book.
I didn't
It's like
think it
no
was
part of
gonna
me
be-
thought it was 10. It was fighting 10 honor bearers. It just, like, they did nothing about like the culture of Shinovar, like all
Yeah.
that stuff. You know, like they didn't get into it. They didn't get into how Seth had been judged incorrectly. Like, it was all, oh, yep, they're following the Herald and he's telling them to do the wrong stuff, and that's bad. So we got to kill him. And like that, it did, like, you know, it was a box check. We got to get 9 honor blades. We got to go to 9 places. And some of the things that happened in those 9 places were cool, but the structure was
Mhm.
was not good.
An interesting plot line, let's say. Like, I didn't mind it, but it's an interesting choice. How about that?
Yeah, if I had to rearrange things to put the flashbacks in line, particularly with the Posen scene, I think the point where Zeth leaves the town to keep going on his journey and his father wants to come with him, he's changing what he's doing in the flashbacks. Like, he's leaving the life that he had. I think that would have been a great splitting point, because that's the point that he's splitting up from Posen in the flashbacks.
Mhm.
So having the Posen scene just after that and having him come back, it's like, oh, we've just seen everything with Posen. Now we've got the fight. I think that would have been so cool.
Yeah, I think that like the whole thing of like Ishar telling as the voice telling like the entire Shin culture like what to do. I think Brandon like oversimplified that like a little bit in terms of like, well, what does taking Ishar out of this equation like do? Like, culture doesn't change that fast. And like that's what bothered me about like cleansing Shinovar. Like, it felt very like checking boxes, like David was saying. It wasn't like an actual like legitimate change, and it didn't have to change overnight. Like, I get we only have 10 days, like that's too little time, but to start to see that actual shift in like the culture and like is that impacting like Shinovar as a whole instead of just, I think there could have been a way of like using both, right? Zeth could have had like some of these fights like with the honor bearers, but also like had a more interaction, like being like less isolated from like Shinovar, like as a place and as a culture, as like
Yeah.
where he grew up. Like you could have done both if like you rearranged some things and like intertwined it more instead of them being like so like removed from civilization.
I mostly didn't hate Seth's plotline. Like, I wasn't expecting the whole honor bearer thing. I had my concerns when it started that it was going to be very video gamey and samey.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised that they each felt very unique.
Yes.
for sure.
It wasn't nodes.
So it's like it worked for me. Like the whole cleansing of Shinovar thing, like I never thought that was going to be I'm changing the entire culture of the Shin. It was like, hey, there's problems with the leadership. We need to fix that.
And like deal with the unmade.
Is kind of what this book
by
is.
executing them though, like he just killed them. Like he didn't like confront the leaders and like be like, you're doing wrong things. Like we need to reform. Like he's like, time to kill a bunch of zombies. You know, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was expecting zombies.
They like like in my mind. Sorry, I've got to lose it. But like, just like if you look at their religion, are they even doing anything wrong? Like, you know, they're too harsh. Like they've got all these rules. Like we don't like those things. But like they are following the commands of their herald, who they are bound to follow. Like I'm just like, this is. I can't even point to a flaw in the logic aside from the fact that they don't know that Ishar is insane. Like,
yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's a big thing. But like the whole thing is like, I think this gets into the problems of the Skybreakers because like Seth thinks there's an unmade there. So he swears this thing. So it's like, okay, go do that thing. It's not necessarily justified. Because you're right. Like if Seth had more context, like would he have sworn that as his oath?
Well, it worked. So at least for a minute. Yeah, I don't know.
You're right, David, in that like what law were they breaking in their in the society? Because in the previous books, Nail's always operated under the law of whichever country he's actually in. But what law was Ishar breaking exactly to allow Seth to do this?
And Seth is wrong. Like he is wrong. The desolation has not begun. So like he's picking up a rebellion that is for nothing. You know, like
I hated the Civil War. I loved everything up to it, and then there's a Civil War. I'm like, why did we have to do this?
I don't think the fact that like the Shin weren't actually breaking any laws doesn't matter. Because like Seth thought they were breaking the law.
I understand that.
It was like part of his oaths. So like part of those oaths is also like proving that he's right. Turns out he's wrong, so he doesn't fulfill that oath. And also like Nail like just went along with it because like, hey, Ishar wants this guy to go there so like he can become a herald. So
I don't disagree that Seth was wrong. It's more that it was all pointless and they didn't do anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if Ishar had not been insane, the herald, they would all be underneath the control of a herald, like ready to go against Odium. And he was, which is bad. But it just didn't go any. There was nothing they could have done. They were just like, there was no moral flaw to root out there. There was nothing for him to do. Like, it's just kind of boring, you know? Like, and like they were wrong. Like they were wrong to send him away. They were wrong to punish a boy the way that they did. And we didn't get into any of that. Like all we did was we showed up and we killed the honor bearers.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, like his family were really toxic to him, and we just didn't explore any of that. It was like, okay,
his dad cried in the end.
This kind of slips into the big problems that I have with the Shinovar plot that I will only briefly touch on because the next episode is
the
next episode is going to have some Skybreaker enjoyers for sure, and they are going to talk about that a lot. I guess I don't know if they have recorded it, so we'll see.
And also some major Zeth lovers as well.
Yes, Zeth lovers as well. Yes, absolutely.
The big issues I have with the Shinovar plot is that it's not really about Zeth at all. It's about Kaladin, and Kaladin gets all the big moments. That should have been Zeth's moments. That should have like brought his character together. but Kaladin has to be the hero all the time. And it's really frustrating because there would have been ways that it could have been incorporated together. And I just don't think they were done. And I wish Seth had just had more autonomy in his character arc, and definitely at the end of the character arc, and him getting the resolution of it instead of just kind of standing at the sidelines.
Yeah. Like, this is such like a delicate balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can totally see that. But Kaladin is the main character of Stormlight.
He's got to be Harold.
Has to do things. And it's like, yes, this is Seth's book, but Rhythm of War was Venli's and Eshonai's book. They don't do things they don't affect the ending of that book. So it's like, it's not like Seth needed things. It would have been better if Seth had done things. But Kaladin is the main character of Stormlight.
I think it's less about affecting the end of the book and more just having a resolution to Seth's character arc throughout the book.
I'm gonna disagree because I think Szeth and becoming the law, having agency, he's choosing finally. He's been so railroaded his entire life. The voices railroading, the honor bearers, then he has the oath stuff, his parents, like just awful. And then then Nail and the Highspren, they're railroading him here, and Ishar is railroading him. Like the entire thing, he has been on these tracks, and he's finally like, no, I'm the law. Screw you, Ishar. I'm going to make my own choices. And like, I thought that was really powerful. I think the one moment is I didn't quite get enough from Szeth to not fight Nail. Like, I was like, interesting. Interesting. Though I do really like the Kaladin flute scene with Nail. But I found the I am the law making his own choices, making his own path with Nightblood in a new world. I thought that was awesome, actually. And like, I think that's exactly what this book was talking about with the flashbacks. So I think, well, it worked for me, at least. So.
I think that was really good. Like, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the lead up to that is just not there. Like, there's a scene with Nail. Like, once he stopped fighting Nail, it was just a Kaladin scene. He was just
farting around there for sure.
All.
That's true.
And there was a way to have the Kaladin with the flute and also have Szeth engage in it. And it frustrates me that we didn't get that. But even at the end, before he swears the fifth ideal, it's about Kaladin with Nightblood more than it's about Szeth fighting the honor bearers, I found. And it was still just Kaladin focused. Though I do like that Szeth was the first person to swear the fifth ideal.
Yes, that was awesome. That was pretty tight. And skipping it was cool. Such a tight moment for sure. It's like, I was like, you can do that? It's like, I don't know, man. Yeah,
you humans.
I mean, he is the law, so he can decide if he
can decide it. Screw you, Nohadon, and your rules.
I really enjoyed Szeth's arc, and I think part of that, like, I kind of get, like, it was a lot of Kaladin, but I also felt like that was also kind of part of the point, was like Szeth learning to like, okay, I'm gonna like let someone else fight this battle for me, was like kind of one of the main points. So I didn't mind it. I mean, there were like a lot of scenes where Szeth was not doing much, but I did think that was like pretty significant, like for him, because it contrasts with his flashbacks where he's just like, I want everyone to tell me what to do. I have to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And then like it contrasts well with like the present day when he's, all right, I'm gonna let Kaladin take over and do this thing, which I thought it worked well.
Yeah, I think like there's a better like threading that needle of like, yes, that contrast between the flashbacks and now, like Will was saying, but also not making it so much about Kaladin. And like I really like that, like, I am the law, skipping the fourth ideal, like the fifth, like all that was really cool. I just think that it could have been a bit better balanced. Kaladin and Zeth's arc, like in the lead up, especially I think with one more revision, it could have given Brandon time to like balance Kaladin and Zeth a bit better, which is what I think the frustration is like with that plot line.
I think that Seth should have stayed dead in Words of Radiance. No, I'm kidding. I only think that about 35%. But now, as a Kaladin stan, even I can see that he's got a big part in the end of the book, and Seth does not as much. And I think that like I love the moment where like Seth swears the ideal and then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh no, like that was the whole plan. Like, what do we do? But like that is a bummer that didn't, like, all that stuff happens and it's cool, and then it kind of doesn't matter. You know?
Sure.
So I agree that it could have been aligned a little better. I do think, and I don't think anyone said this so far, I do think that Kaladin had to become the Herald at the end, though. It would have been wrong for Seth to have been part of Seth's ending.
Absolutely.
For sure. Because I just can't see Seth signing up for more suffering like that.
Kaladin's totally correct. He cannot do this. That's taking away his agency. Like, we cannot do that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I do have like I haven't fully finished processing how I feel about Kaladin like walking away from the spear and then like coming back to it a little bit the next book. I think that it works all right. Like, Brandon's making it more that like, Kaladin was doing that reflexively. He had kind of decided that that's what he wanted to do. And now he's kind of got a healthier relationship with the protection side of like his desires. But it's a little fast for me. It's a little hard for me to see him go. Like I was interested in like the peaceful path. And so it's a little bit fast for him to veer back on I can fight because now I know that it's okay if I lose, but all in all, I did love when he became the Herald. I did shed a little tear there when Dalinar died.
We can't ask you of this, and Kaladin chooses. Like, yeah. Like, there's a lot of things about choices, right, and making the right choice. Yeah.
That was the epic moment of this book for me, was Kaladin becoming the Herald.
Yeah.
But
I will say, I actually really like the flashbacks and the mystery with the voice, and like. I thought that was very intriguing. I know, David, I see that face on you, David, because it's so funny, people being like, oh man, what if there's multiple unmade in Shinovar? And I'm just here thinking like, would you go for 0 unmade in Shinovar, actually? Goose egg. I mean, Ishar's ODME, so yeah, but yeah.
He is now. Yeah.
He's literally ODME. Like, he went to the well of control.
Yep.
He had the odiums.
Yes. Not in my background. But.
I liked the flashbacks up to a point, but 2 of the scenes that just jump out as some of the most horrifying things that Brandon has written, the Molly scene.
Oh my god!
It's brutal.
I am not a body horror person at all.
Intense.
So that was rough to get through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the Zeth going to the cave and just finding the spikes in the wall.
So creepy.
Oh my god! Those 2 scenes just really stand out for the horror aspect of them. And I think Brandon's definitely getting a lot better at writing bits and pieces of horror, and I'm glad he only does it in bits and pieces.
So
yeah, like I'm kind of hit or miss on the Seth flashbacks. There's some of them I like, some of them I don't. It's like the cave scene was cool, but like I immediately knew it wasn't Xia, so I was mostly just confused of like, what's going on here?
I was also very confused, yes.
And so like that was very unsatisfying, and then like I wasn't interested in any of his flashbacks after that point.
Yeah, the war was that was the weakest part for sure. I would agree with that. Oh god, so we're at 3 hours and we have barely okay. Well, so we gotta get into some more complaining, and I know 2 people on this cast want to talk about Jasnah real bad and have complaints.
Okay, so I was so excited for the Jasnah plot. Like, the setup I thought was great. Like, as disappointed as I am that Brandon has no interest in doing like large scale societal shifts, like dealing with the impact of ending slavery, and that's going to just happen in a page. I've accepted it. He's just going to go for it. But the Jasnah, I'm like, Jasnah in her element, Jasnah v. Taravangian, having a debate, back to Way of Kings, you know, all this good stuff. Like, and Jasnah in a position that I thought was really, really tough. Like, you know, Taravangian has so much on his side. He's got the whole world, you know, he's got like from the aspect of this is a trading country and they've got nowhere to trade if they win.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much the whole ball game right there. So like, yeah, like I was on board for Jasnah losing. I wanted her to make a really good argument and you lose. Jasnah has the understanding of utilitarianism of a freshman year sophomore in college, and it's just it shattered it for me. Like I just couldn't like the arguments weren't good enough, and I don't think Brandon quite managed to make that work, which just sucks. And like I understand wanting Jasnah to like go through a bunch and like put her in a position so we're ready for the next book when she's going to be a new character and she's going to have new character conflicts, but it just did not work for me, and I'm pretty bummed about it.
Everything David just said is everything I would say. I was so excited for this. Like it was a different type of conflict, and it was one that fit her character so well. And I love the idea of her losing and like having to build herself back up again. And then everything in between that is the actual chapters of the debates, I hated so much. Yeah. I have so many problems with them, and I won't go into them all now because I know we're going to have a Jasnah.
We will absolutely have a Jasnah episode. Yes, 100%. Any of these are full episodes, so sorry if we're going puddle deep here.
Just every part of it, I had something like an issue with it. I had an issue with the very beginning because of some of the stuff that Taravangian said that in my mind completely invalidated the entire thing. So why the hell were they doing this at all? Jasnah said some stuff that I think was completely unnecessary because she was not in the position that she should have had to argue for it. It was Taravangian had the onus on him, but okay.
Yeah, burden of proof.
And she just shoots herself in the foot by doing it. And then the actual like philosophical debate, fully agree with David. Jasnah's arguments are very basic. Taravangian's arguments are so basic as well. They are like entry-level debate, never done any debating before level of arguments. But she thinks that he's great at this, and they're just, I don't even know how to describe it just because it makes me so mad.
The potential is so strong. Like the potential is so strong.
The potential is so strong, and then like the actual application of it is just so elementary. And like I described it to Eric at one point as imagine the debate was about math and they turned up and started debating elementary math. That is the level that I see this at.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
And then on top of all of that, I don't think Taravangian won. Like I do not think he won that debate. I think it's just that Jasnah had to lose. So Jasnah lost. But I don't think there was anything that Taravangian did that made him worth winning. And I feel so frustrated by that because it makes it feel really shoehorned in that we had to have this ending. And I wanted this ending. I liked this ending. And I don't like how it happened at all.
Yeah, I think another one of my complaints was, besides the actual debate itself, there was the whole fact it kind of felt almost pointless because afterward, Taravangian just shows up to Glow and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, even if you did win, I had these deepest ones that would have just popped out of the ground, taken over the council. I had all these plants, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, even if you did win. And that
he
almost
says
just
it
like
at the beginning that he could just attack them if they don't want to engage with him, which to me, I'm like, well, there's no debate anymore because you've just said that you'll just attack them. Like, what's the point in any of this?
Yeah. And like, I almost wish it was like, he had been bluffing because it feels like after the fact, when it's, confirmed that he actually could have just done it, that it kind of just felt like the whole debate was pointless. And like, why even would Taravangian take this time and attention to debate Jasnah and do all this stuff when he could have just, plopped in the deepest ones and just taken it over equally easily. And like, also he might have not had, to make those, because he has to make like some kind of compromises with Fen, like, we won't conscript your soldiers. He might have not, and he was reluctant to make some of those concessions. So why didn't he just, use the deepest ones, take over by force, and then he wouldn't have had to compromise in that way, and he could have just done it a lot easier.
Just wants to break Jasnah and like have
he
Jasnah
wants her.
He wants her specifically, just like he wants to prove it to Dalinar, right? Like
Dalinar.
So he's willing to sacrifice all of that. It's just, I don't know. It didn't land for me either this time. Yeah.
Taravangian has this complex of like, I have to be right. I have to like beat Jasnah and Dalinar in these debates. Like it says so explicitly, like in one of his interludes, people I have to stick it to, like that I have to like break down completely. And that just like, here's the thing, like that whole debate of like that whole feeling that you had that it could have been by like a freshman in college, like just starting like a real debate class. Brandon has recruited physicists and people that know about science to write about science. Why don't you recruit about?
Yeah. It's very, you literally broke the internet with that. I like that.
If you take an introduction to ethics class, that just wipes out everything that happened.
Yeah.
Like the other thing that frustrated me was Fen in this scene, and it took me a while to like notice it, but like once like discussing it and people were like bringing up like, why isn't Fen saying anything? She's very opinionated. I mean, we saw the way she reacted to Dalinar and Oathbringer when Dalinar was like first saying like, you should join the coalition. Why isn't she fighting back more? Why is she letting Jasnah do this for her? And like not at least like interjecting a little bit. Like, I get that she trusts Jasnah, but this is a whole other level of just like sidelining, like kind of like making her like useless. Like she's not doing anything.
My turn?
Yes.
Because I am the iconoclast and I actually kind of enjoyed this scene.
Let's do it.
We have to balance it. Ian has to be here so we can balance it.
Yes.
Full disclosure. Again, read the beta. I was super disappointed in this scene in the beta.
Fascinating.
This time reading it, I'm like, that actually kind of works for me. Okay. And maybe I've just fully forgotten what the beta scene was.
That's like possible. Yes. It's
very
been a long
possible.
time.
It was 7 months ago. I've not gone back. Like one of like the little things was him like Taravangian pulling out the recording of like one of the lines from her, like from the beginning of the book. I'm like, that I liked, that I thought was cool.
I
but also
that.
like the whole like Taravangian didn't win. I more or less agree with you. That also, Taravangian wasn't trying to win. He was trying to make Jasnah lose. And like talking about how like Finn didn't interject. I think that's important because it like Finn became such a non-entity in that scene. So like the viewer would start to forget that she was there because Jasnah was forgetting that she was there. Jasnah was getting too distracted by the debate.
That's a good point.
That's an interesting point.
Like, the reason she kind of messed up, in my opinion, is that she forgot what the purpose was. She forgot she wasn't just debating Taravangian. She was trying to convince Fen not to go with Taravangian.
Okay.
And also, like, she was exhausted. She wasn't at the top of her game. Should she have made more nuanced arguments? Probably. But also, like, most readers probably aren't going to understand in-depth philosophical debate. So I'm like, I don't totally blame Brandon for not going super in-depth, but it worked for me.
Yeah, it's writing geniuses is hard. Yeah.
The issue that I have, I don't think he needs to do an in-depth philosophical debate. It's that Jasnah just isn't responding in ways that I would imagine someone who has studied philosophy to respond. The fact that she even starts the debate in the way that I need to convince Fen to stay in the coalition. Why? Why would she even start it that way? I really do not understand. Because the onus isn't on her then. It's on Taravangian to convince Fen to leave. And I feel like Jasnah should have known that and should have started in a way that was, no, this is on you. You convince her. I'm not doing this for you. And when his whole thing is, you're a subject of mine, like you'll do it for me, she immediately starts doing it for him by doing that.
The other thing too is it just like, if you go back and like if you read her debate with Taravangian in The Way of Kings about her atheism, like she comes across as somebody who's thought about it. You know, she's like, yep, I've talked to a ton of people about this. Like, I know what you're gonna say. Like, I know all this stuff. And we get to utilitarianism, like the other, you know, the two halves of Jasnah, like philosophically. And she's never considered that she does actually prioritize her family and her kingdom over the world. Like that's she's never really sat down and thought about it even a little bit, you know, like she just seems so poorly considered to me. And like my other like constant, like, I'm going to say this every time it comes up. I'm not on the dark web. I don't know anything about hiring assassins. I don't know anything about that sort of stuff. I don't know.
Unlikely story.
When you're hiring an assassin, writes up a whole ass contract with your name on it, and you go, I, Yasta Colon, am signing my name here so that List will go kill Asudan. Signed, Jasnah. She doesn't sign anything in the words of Radiant Prologue, so she's brought a signed contract to the scene. Why would you do that? She's a genius. Who
Yeah.
Like that didn't even like it was just a nonsense like moment. Like you could have just been like, yeah, I tried to like you tried to assassinate your cousin, didn't you, Jasnah, or your sister-in-law? And she would have been like, yeah, you didn't need to bring in a signed contract.
That's consistently hilarious. I think for me, actually, the thing that gets me is actually not the arguments. It just doesn't feel dramatic enough. Like it just the pacing of this and how the scene breaks is just like, I don't know, that just things like hit emotionally a bit like a wet noodle to me. So like I'm not even talking about the arguments here. I did actually like the scene where Taravangian was talking to Jasnah after the debate. I thought that was interesting. And just Taravangian being like, oh I totally could have done this. You should be my queen though. Like that'd be pretty cool, right? And her being destroyed and stuff, like it's interesting, but I'm just like, I don't understand. Why did we do this? I don't know. It's weird.
I perfectly understand why Jasnah needs to like build herself back up for the second half, because like the Jasnah we get at this point has like sworn 4 out of 5 ideals, and she's supposed to be the last book. I was always wondering, how in the world are we gonna get Jasnah having a character arc in the last book of the series?
Sure.
Like beyond her flashbacks. I just don't like the way we got there.
Yeah.
Is my thing. Like, because like all these things we've discussed is just like, like I understand the purpose of like tearing her down. And I think that like in concept, it's fine. Like in terms of like, well, Jasnah losing and like the idea of this being a different type of conflict. I like all of that, like in theory. It's just the practice that I didn't like. And like I know that like I can see the hand of the author of like, okay, like we need this so that Jasnah can be a character in the back half and have her arc, because she's already like had so much of it in terms of like the standard like measure of progression being ideals.
All right. Well, I have to run. Like the Stormlight Archive, I will be back with more takes in the future, hopefully sooner than 10 years.
You better be.
Right.
We got stuff to do, man.
But, yeah. Final thoughts, though, that I want to throw out there that we didn't quite get to. Sigzil, sorry, such a disappointment. I was really counting on him to like, this is my concept, so it wasn't Brandon's clearly. I thought he was going to make a big mistake. Like, I thought he was going to make a big mistake as a leader, and that there would be consequences for that mistake. And he was put in a no-win situation, which, you know, is another different sort of conflict. But what the Sunlit Man conjured in my mind was not executed for what happened with Sigzil on the plateau. Like, it definitely sucked, but it just like it didn't quite rise to what he had evoked in my mind. And the other piece is I'm just like, sorry, Brandon, you really messed up with the contract. Like the contract wasn't done very well between Rhythm of War and this book. Like people were looking for loopholes. People were looking for cool stuff. You need to do it needed to have been planned better because it ended up not being matter. It didn't matter. It was confusing. We had to have a Lethe law involved. Like that just should have been. It should have been nailed down. It should have been nailed down. And that's the sort of stuff that I like prize Brandon's books on. And so when like that doesn't happen, like that's like a big mark against it for me. I love Brandon's book. Still a huge fan, and I think he hit like all the highs in this that he normally does. But like Veronica was saying, I could feel the hand of the author in this book a lot more. I could feel like he knew where he was going, and whether it was a detail in a previous book that didn't quite align, or whether it was just not having enough time to read stuff up and make sure it all fit really well, or just having to kind of paper over some issues as we went through the revision process, the polish wasn't there. But that's it. But still love Brandon, still love Stormlight Archive, still excited for the future.
You're not going to change your username?
As soon as we find out what the anti-Windrunners are on the back half glyph, that'll be my new name. I'll be that.
You'll be the
whatever
first
they
one.
are.
You'll be the first one.
The runner wins.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's just Cool. Well, thanks for being on, David. Okay. We have more complaining to do. So since David gave us a wonderful segue, let's segue over to the Shattered Plains to Sigzil and also Venli. I was interested how Venli was going to fit in. And this was... I didn't dislike this plot, but Sigzil is like my least favorite non-Jasnah plot.
Aggressively mid.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Like offended by how bad it is.
Yeah.
As like we had to be at the Shattered Plains. It's like too important to the series to ignore this as a thing.
It's cool to have the big magic
very
battles.
Skippable chapters.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry. Like it's Vienta like was fun.
Yeah.
But because we have Sunlit Man, we know something bad's gonna happen. Moash. I said it in Rhythm of War span reads. He's a cartoon villain. I don't care about him. And then like Venli, we got like some interesting stuff with the Chasm Fiends. We found the Well of Control. My biggest frustration was I did figure out the plan to have the listeners take over and was very frustrated that Brandon acted so coy about the most obvious plan ever. I'm like, Brandon, why are you doing this? Why aren't you just saying the thing the characters know? It's not a good reveal. Like, I know what's going to happen.
I think for I didn't hate the arc, but it was more like whenever, because there's a lot of, POV switching. Whenever I got to a Sigzil POV, it was almost like I got to read through this to get back to like the POV that I'm more interested in type thing. It was like, it was interesting plot wise, but it was more like, I'm reading it to see what happens. I'm not reading it because it's like, a super interesting arc to me. My main problem was that Moash, that Moash didn't really do anything. He got, knock off Inquisitor spikes. But I feel like, if anything, I was expecting like a Moash Kaladin confrontation. I mean, it just didn't, and it was unsatisfying to me, the confrontation that we got, where you have like Lopin and the others coming down, and then Moash just leaves. Like, you just, all right, I'm out. And then he just flies off. I felt like the confrontation should have been like a lot more than that. And it was just kind of like, oh, I'm here. I'm going to, kill someone and leave.
I'm in the book too.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, it was Leighton, which I barely remembered anything about Leighton other than that he was the armorer. So it was like his death didn't hit me very hard.
I think that's why we have the scene of him at the beginning with Kaladin to remind us that he exists.
That's probably true, yeah.
One minor thing and then like actual points. First of all, I cannot take the name Viento seriously as a Spanish speaker. It is way too close to viento, which is the Spanish word for wit. Sorry, Brandon.
Sure.
So I just can't take it seriously.
I mean, like, yeah, that's the point. Like most, like a lot of others friends have like wind-based names.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just it bothers me more than it like the other ones that are like more like adjacenty things. Like, like Silfrina kind of like gives like cloud vibe. Like it's like more vibes than so close.
Sure.
But anyway, other than that tiny thing that I just have to point out, I think that Sigzil's arc, like Ian said, like aggressively mid. I do like wonder how it's gonna come off to people who haven't read the Sunlit Man yet.
Yeah, that's gonna be
Because
interesting.
for me, like knowing that, I mean, the whole events of Sunlit are coming makes like parts of this like even more tragic than it would be otherwise. Of like the whole Locks thing and knowing like the responsibility that Sigzil feels like enhances what is here. However, I do agree with David that it wasn't as hype as I expected it to be from like the way Sigzil talked about it in Sunlit Man. So it's like kind of like those two conflicting things of like it hit for me mostly because of what we already know. Like, oh no, this is bad. Like we know where it's going, and it's kind of like that dread, like what is going to happen and how like tragic it ends up being, like in that book. But also, like I thought this was going to be a way bigger thing from the way it was framed.
I'll tell you who brought the hype was Dammy, the Stoneward, because we had all the memes on the Discord about like Dammy is like next Taln, like he's just gonna destroy everyone. He's super OP, and then we find out that he's literally just nicknamed the Stormwall. Like I was very confused by the first time I read that. I'm like, wait, they're bringing the Stormwall? Are they doing something with the High Storm? It's like, oh nope, it's just Dammy. He's just gonna destroy everyone.
He was pretty awesome.
I really enjoyed that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Lived up to the hype.
I hated the name Stonewall so much. I don't understand the point of reusing pretty well-known words as a name. That's just confusing. I did not like it. I liked him as a character. He was totally fine. I just didn't like that as a title. I found Sigzil's plot fine, but I'm actually the opposite of what Veronica was saying, where Sunlit Man just like dampened everything for me. Like it made it worse because it felt like this entire plot was there because we need to get to Sunlit Man. And it didn't really feel like it didn't feel like a plot that needed to necessarily be there. It could have been anyone else on the plains. It didn't have to be Sigzil, but Sigzil had to have a plot so that he could get the Dawn Shard so that we could have Sunlit Man. And that's really how it felt to me. So I didn't mind it. It was fine. I liked some of his internal emotional stuff. Vianta was kind of fun. I didn't really care when she died. She didn't die, when Sigzil renounced his oaths. And I think it was kind of problematic that we had that happen twice in this book, because I think it was done a lot better with Dalinar, like a lot better with Dalinar. So having it happen with Sigzil first and it not being a massive moment, at least for me, just kind of made it even worse when we then had a really good version of it later. So yeah, those are really
Seth
my
does
thoughts.
it too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he does it too. Yeah.
That's good though.
Yeah, it was good with Seth as well. It just wasn't that good with Sigzil.
For me, this whole plot line, because Sunlit Man and things had a great sense of foreboding. There's the Everstorm. There's this massive army infused and stuff. The High Storm goes, just evaporates in front of the Everstorm. Like, oh, that's so hype. And then it's just like, we're kind of just fighting. And then like sometimes Moash pops out and is like, hey, what's up? I'm going to kill the Bridgeforce person. And it's it's okay. I wouldn't say that Vienta like death scene with like Moash and stuff really hit that hard for me. Like it's fine. It's mid. It's mid. It's my least favorite thing, other than Jasnah.
Speaking of like the whole like, does this benefit from having read Sunlit Man, or is it undermined by having read Sunlit Man? I'm just going to go back to Brandon didn't need to release 5 books in 1 year. He didn't
True.
have to release Sunlit Man before this book. Because I'm also in the camp of like, yeah, like I don't really care about this plot line having already read Sunlit.
Interesting. It gave me a big feel of dread. I really liked the feel of dread, and it just didn't quite live up to the hype for me.
I think if it had been written better, I would have had some dread. The way it's written, I didn't.
I think that's fair.
Care.
I think that's super fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
I agree with Ian in that Moash is just a cartoon villain. And now I literally cannot get out of my head the picture of Dopey, one of the 7 dwarves, with gemstones in his eyes. And it is such a funny picture. And Eric, you have to put it on screen.
I'll put it on screen. Just for you.
That's all I see of him. So it just makes it so much more cartoonish and more of a joke that it just can't take it seriously. But I did also like his interlude where he was turned into a Crystal Inquisitor. That was
actually really interesting.
That was kind of cool. It was just the whole idea of it being gemstones.
One thing with the whole Shattered Plains plotline in general that I didn't hate it, but it just felt underwhelming was Diagonarthus, because
yes,
I mean it was cool, but it kind of felt like it was more hyped up, like with the death rattle of like, you know, the Black Fisher consumes my soul or whatever, or holds my soul and consumes it, and then it was just kind of like, okay, you know, we can teleport. Yeah, you know, we have an L-skate and we can instantly teleport. I just felt. I mean, like, I'm hoping that there will be more fun stuff that Diagonarthus can do. But if it's just teleporting, that feels really lame to me.
Diagonarthus is going to be more
I am interested
things.
by the whole price thing, but
way more things.
The price thing seemed interesting to me because it's like Odium's like, you know, I'll pay the price or whatever.
Even if Odium's
to see what that is.
Like that's really cool. I think.
If Odium's reluctant to pay the price, it's got to be something interesting.
Yeah,
but I felt the teleporting thing was kind of underwhelming.
Okay,
yeah. Like there's also like the bit about like there are lands protected from her touch.
Oh,
yeah.
What does that mean? It is like somewhat underwhelming just making a portal.
Yeah,
but I have faith in my heart that there's more cool stuff going on with her.
Unmade stuff's gonna be cool. He's holding back a lot.
Yeah, because you got to save stuff for back half too.
Yeah, I think what happened was that like we got that interlude with like L, and then the Odium interlude after that. And it's like, oh, Diagonarthus, finally something. And then it's like, no, wait until the back half. I think that's like the problem I had there. I have faith that she's gonna be like really cool in the back half, but just like that's like immediate like hype raiser of like, oh, Diagonarthus, the price, all that, like wasn't warranted for this book. It's more setup.
This book has the problem, exactly what you're saying, where these things are being set up for the back half, but they've already been set up sort of for now. Like people are already expecting them. So to then just give bits and pieces and teasing for later, that is so disappointing because we've been waiting for so long and we're still not going to get things.
It's kind of like the town fight thing that people were talking about, right?
Because we'd already had it hyped up that he was the best fighter.
Yeah.
Also,
and I know we haven't gotten to it yet, but like, bam, just
oh, we will.
The whole ending.
Yeah. We're not ending this episode without it. Don't worry.
Yeah, and like it's kind of like the Lost Metal problem as well. Like it's setting up so much for Era 3 that like some things just feel like lacking in the end of that book. I mean, it's a problem in a different way because that's less of a direct continuation than Stormlight will be. But yeah, I think it's just like this trend of like Brandon like really, really wants to get to back half Cosmere, like this like new era that like some of those threads are like being dropped a little bit like right now.
Jumping back a little back to Moash and the Moash interlude, because I also did enjoy that interlude. because Moash could be such an interesting character. Like, there's very interesting, nuanced things about him and his story. Brandon just doesn't do anything.
Yep.
Like, so, like, that's kind of makes it even more disappointing.
Yeah.
And why, like, yeah, like, is he a literal cartoon villain? No. Am I going to call him that anyway? Yes, because he could be so much better, and I'm so incredibly disappointed. But Brandon, it's been very clear Brandon isn't interested in writing that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to have multiple books where a character just basically does nothing, but you still need to have them in the book to remind people that they exist.
Mhm.
And I don't know how it's going to go, how he's going to pull it off, but now Moash has multiple foils. Like, he was the foil for Kaladin. We've never had that resolved.
Nope.
Now he's also a foil for Sigzil. And how is this going to work? I'm very apprehensive about
Mhm.
these both being satisfactory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get it resolved with Sigzil.
No. Sigzil's
Yeah,
long
Sigzil
gone up.
jumped ship.
I mean, Moash could be endgame, Cosmere endgame. He'll just be like, hey, I'm here to still hunt Bridge 4 characters. Like, it's one of those, I think maybe Brandon making characters crystal monster villains is maybe just bad. It's like, it wasn't great for Amaram. Like, admittedly, it was kind of interesting in Moash's interlude, especially with like Taravangian being like, no, you need, like, I'm giving your emotions back, and like trying to get a little bit into that Moash character stuff, but then just his dialogue is all just like, yep, I'm here to kill you. Like, okay. It's like a BD's dialogue of being like, I will drink the blood of the Radiance. I'm like, yeah, you've said that a few times already. Like, yeah, that's super cool, bud. It's like, yeah, man. L was cool though. L was cool.
Yeah, I
L
was hoping to get more L.
L was really
Brandon,
good.
please don't drop that thread for the back half. I want more L.
L's
in the back half, because L's a character
not
really
going to be
cool.
dropped.
He's the
L's way
only
too
good
important.
fuse
But
remaining.
I want
That's cool.
more of him.
I will shout, Venli's stuff was very interesting to me. Like, I thought that was very cool. With the chasm fiends and stuff.
Mhm.
And like, I do agree though, Ian. The stuff with the plan that they had, I think just Jasnah's like, oh, with dealing with a very interesting thing on the Shattered Plains. That annoyed me a lot. That was too on the nose. I was more confused than anything, so I didn't think it was too obvious. I was just like, why aren't you just telling me the plan? I don't understand what's happening, type thing. But like, yeah. But overall, I liked Venli's stuff and how that's setting the listeners up. Like, I really like how the listeners are going to matter a lot. And so I thought that was a nice, quick character or like little plot line in a very stuffed book that like worked fine. And I think it helped that we didn't need a massive Venli arc. We just needed like, we're exploring some Venli stuff. They're going to be important later. Like, that was an appropriate amount of Venli, I felt, for this massively stuffed book.
And I like that it's also an exit point for the Fused. Because like the Fused are like Leshwi is with her through all of that. And then at the end, like there's the Husked one that she saw like catatonic like on earlier on, and like he's more animated now because like he was a farmer and like he's having passion to like
that's gonna
farm
be interesting
again. It's like a good retirement for the Fuse and like turning them back into people.
That's gonna be really interesting for sure. All right, everyone. It's a time maybe no one's been waiting for, but I've been waiting for. It's time to talk about Ba-Ado-Mishram. Okay? I joked before this book came out that the book is either a 0 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 solely based on Ba-Ado-Mishram. And I will say, Ba-Ado-Mishram opens. It's so good. She's so creepy and like gonna wreck everyone. I love that. Some people think that's one note. I'm into it, so that's fine. I don't mind at all. And Ba-Ado-Mishram is a very interesting character where especially when we see that last Desolation vision where Shallan goes in there and like sees Ba-Ado-Mishram there. That was very interesting. I'm a little disappointed that it seems like Ba-Ado-Mishram is like some super uplifted singer with a singer's face. I'm like, But it fits, but it's not as I don't know. It's fine. It's fine.
I don't know if I would agree that she's a super uplifted singer.
She's always
She just
using the singer
takes-
face, though. Yeah.
But like, or she's like a huge black massive smoke.
Yeah,
with a bunch
she's
of
cool
arms
as a
coming
smoker
out of it.
monster, honestly. I like the smoke monster Ba-Ado-Mishram
Like,
better, I'll say.
I think it makes sense that she generally presents as the form
yeah.
of a singer.
Yeah.
But like the way she does it is very, because like she doesn't look like a singer. She looks like a massive smoke in
Yeah.
the form of a singer. Like the marbling patterns like are like bands of smoke.
Yeah.
So like
She's
she's cooler than you're saying.
It's fine. I'm just saying my Ba-Ado-Mishram expectations are the highest of everyone, I think. If you know of a bigger Ba-Ado-Mishram fan, let me know and I'll kill you. But no, that's a joke. That's a joke.
Kill the person telling you or killing the bigger
Yeah,
fan?
kill the person telling me about them. That'll really solve the problem. And like, I get this book in some sense is like really sidestepping Unmade. Like the most Unmade stuff is Mishram in this book. Every other Unmade thing, even in the Tanavas flashbacks, is like, yeah, the Unmade. We'll see you later, I guess. It's hilarious. And so obviously Mishram is the main Unmade for this book. I get that. And she's obviously very important. And I will say very relevant for the plot. Like I loved the scene of her capture, like all that stuff with the recreants. I really liked. I thought that was great. And being betrayed by Honor, her like slurping up Odium's perpendicularity and getting one over on Race, amazing. Like really awesome stuff. I just wanted her to kill more people, okay? Like she's set up as a big badass murderer, okay? And I understand the whole point is Renarin and Rlain to like fix the bridge between the two species. Like I understand all that. And so for me, Ba-Ado-Mishram, it's an 8 out of 10 Ba-Ado-Mishram. Okay, that's my rating. Like it's fine. It didn't kill the book for me. I just wanted Ba-Ado-Mishram to do more, but it made sense that the main thing she would do in that moment would be like trying to kill Renarin and Rlain, and that like Rlain protect. It was really good. It was a great scene. I didn't mind it. I guess I was just hoping earlier in the book, it's like, oh man, maybe day 8, they're going to release Ba-Ado-Mishram, and that's when things are going to get really bad. Things are bad now. They'll get so much worse when Ba-Ado-Mishram's released. And it's just, we just released her so Dalinar could get Honor, and okay. Like, it thematically is fine, but I just wish she could murder more people, because I'm just a little less into her now. Sorry, babe. That's me talking to Ba-Ado-Mishram, not my wife, who's also on the show.
I feel for you, Eric.
Okay.
Like I understand being in love with a character.
Oh, good. Thanks.
The Ba-Ado-Mishram of the parts of things I did generally enjoy. I think her not being psychopathic murder monster is better.
Yeah, and like I get that. Like logically I understand that. Okay, I get it.
It's not as hot, but it is
it's not
better
as
for
hot.
the story.
I'm sorry. It's just not. I'm sorry.
The thing I don't like is the origin of the listeners.
I've come to terms with this.
I've also mostly come to terms with it.
Yes,
because I've reread the previous books, and there are a couple of offhand lines that kind of indicate this.
That the Unmade are the
There's
gods.
far more that definitely don't. Because like, let's be real. The way it's presented in previous books, from my reading, was that the listeners rebelled against the fused and like escaped into like the wilderness and it was a fraught and an epic tale. And no, it was basically like, nah, we don't like your vibes. We're going to walk over there. And then she just let them go. Which, from the context of Ba-Ado-Mishram, that does serve a purpose to show that she's not as bad as we may assume. Fundamentally ruins the listener origin story, in my opinion. I do not forgive Brandon. Because there's a line about Remodial about the listeners being the only group to throw off fused or control. What fused? There hadn't been fused on Roshar for 2,000 years. Brandon, you did not set this up well. Yeah, that's my soapbox for the book.
Mishram soapboxes, yeah.
I just wanted her to do more at the end. Just do something when she was released. It didn't have to be go around and kill a bunch of people. I love the Renarin and Rlain scene. Keep that. Just have her then do anything.
Yeah, if she literally did anything, then I'd,
Yeah, this is just another thing of we've waited so long for Ba-Ado-Mishram to turn up. But this entire book is just it's just set up for Ba-Ado-Mishram in the future. And we want something from her now.
She will be really cool in the future, though.
She will be really cool.
She'll be really cool.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I have faith in that.
I did really like her personification in this, though. What we get in that one vision where she's going around and healing singers and talking to Shallan about it was so interesting to me.
Very interesting.
I was not expecting such compassion and empathy from her, particularly knowing that the Shard of Odium is more interested in Mishram than in Rhays.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
And then, of course, we get the modern day Ba-Ado-Mishram, and she's got all the rage, she's got the anger, and that kind of fits the Shard. But yeah, I just wasn't expecting basically this Mother Earth type character.
Yeah.
Who just takes care of her own.
Sure.
So yeah, that was fascinating to me, and I really want to see more of that. And I'm worried we won't see more of that. We'll just see modern day Ba-Ado-Mishram.
Yeah, I mean, I think I liked the scene of her healing, which it kind of applied she is compassionate as long as you're not a human. So if you're a human, then she's make sure no humans draw breath. But I liked oh my little singers, I love you all so much. You're my little babies. I'll take care of you. And then if any human sets foot near me, I'll vaporize you type thing. Just a fun contrast between the two.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, at least to an extent. I agree that she's not super compassionate to humans because it's not like she's going around and reviving them. But she does stop to sing to a human who is dying, which is not something I would expect someone to do if they just hated the other side.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess most of the hatred of humans just came later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it largely comes from her imprisonment. A lot of it comes from there.
Which, fair. And that's valid.
Very fair towards the humans, because the humans have been attacking. I think of the singers as her people. So they've been attacking her people for so long now. Of course, she's got to dislike the humans, but I don't think the hatred's actually there until after she's captured.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'll clarify, I don't think I love Ba-Ado-Mishram. I loved the idea of Ba-Ado-Mishram. And that's where the expectation, of of a person, we've never seen her on screen. I know this. So it's she's fine. She's fine. I'm interested in the future. I'm just,
We're gonna find out in 20 years. Jessie paid Brennan off to make Sam less cool. So she didn't have to compete with a fictional character.
And I have been on the Ba-Ado-Mishram train longer than we've been together. That is a factual statement.
That is true, yeah.
But also, do we know why the Ghostbloods wanted Mishram? That was very unclear what Yaddle's plan was. And
Like
Kelsey,
as a source of
No
void
idea.
light, I'm
guess,
assuming.
yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like Yaddle had something going on there, and then Kelsey was like, "Oh, Mishram's out. I don't care anymore." I'm like, I feel like we didn't really close the loop there, but okay, whatever.
Yeah, that definitely felt like a Yaddle and Mrai's plan. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that was Kelsey's plan at all. He just didn't particularly care
Yeah,
in what happened.
he just wanted investiture, I guess. Yeah, it's cool to see Kelsey on screen. Like that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Maybe because they were able to get Void Light to Roshar. So there was a known way of getting it off of Roshar. So
Yeah,
it
with
was
Gavilar.
would be easier to go that route than to try and get Stormlight off, which was their original plan.
Yeah. Well, can't do that anymore. So it's not a problem.
So we've mentioned a couple of things that we're a little bit nervous on how it's going to go with the time jump. I wanted to talk about the fact that Shallan's pregnant.
Yeah, if you didn't
And-
notice that, it's it's a little subtle, but
Yeah.
I feel like I miss this on every time I read those scenes.
yeah,
So
you gotta look carefully.
yeah.
I think.
I still wish to deny it, and I do not think it is anywhere near as obvious as people say it is, but everyone's
Yeah,
saying it, so okay.
Yeah, like I for one second I was like I thought, oh, the Shallan's pregnant, and then reading later, and I was questioning if I'd actually made the right read.
Right.
So we're going to have a 10-year time jump. So we're doing the exact same thing of cutting out a bunch of very interesting, important things of a person's life and relationships, because Shallan's and Shadesmar, Adolin's and Azamir, and if she's pregnant, she's going to have a child, and we're not going to get like any of the growing up. We're just going to go straight to, okay, here's a 10-year-old. That frustrates me because it's just another thing in the list of let's just skip the middle.
Especially if we get like pattern parenting, might be very
Mhm.
fun to read. And I hope we at least get some of that at some point, but it is kind of sad to miss out on. I mean, 10 is still pretty young, but we'll still miss out on like a lot of, them raising, being raised and growing up as a very small child. And I feel like pattern, there could be some very fun scenes with pattern trying to babysit / be a parent.
Yeah, like maybe we get things as flashbacks or something, but I want things like Shallan having to parent by herself and like be a single mother and the difficulties that come with that. I want scenes of Adolin not knowing his child because he's separated from them, and like the emotional toll that takes on both Adolin and Shallan and the child. And I don't think we're gonna get these things.
This is kind of getting into like the Taln fight being off screen. I'm fine with that happening off screen. Like, I don't need to see like Shallan struggling like with a baby like that.
Yeah, I'm same. Yeah.
And like in a different series, that would be very interesting. Like, it's just like such a disconnect from what Stormlight Archive is. We do know Adolin is getting a Sion, so they're at least going to be able to talk, which I don't love that. I like the tragedy of like Shallan being pregnant and being alone.
I like that a little better.
And
too.
Adolin not necessarily knowing. So it's like,
That's
oh yeah,
brutal.
like he's gonna find out like via Sion, and like they're gonna be able to talk. It's a little like make them suffer. Which isn't gonna happen.
Yes.
So it's like I like the tee off of like this is gonna be rough on Shallan. I'm interested to see where this ends in 10 years when we revisit her. I don't need the blow by blow. I know it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, I think this comes back to like I much prefer character based plots over like external plots. And Brandon has really moved this series into the direction of, okay, things are happening externally and we're not going to have anywhere near as many character moments and like dealing with small intimate things. And yeah, that's just something I've been seeing more and more as the series moves along, particularly in this book. And that's what I want. Like those are the things that I want from the books. And like we had it in Lost Metal as well. And I'm just seeing it here. And it makes me disappointed just because that's the type of reader I am. Like I want the relationships. I want the smaller moments that don't necessarily move the plot along, but are important to characterization.
I think like with this whole like Shallan thing, it's more about isn't just like the blow by blow of like her child growing up. It's mostly about like the challenges that comes with not only all the things that Jessie mentioned that are like external of like the situation of the world, but also Shallan didn't have particularly good parents growing up, so she's gonna have to try to cope with that. Like, oh, how can I try to be a good parent? And like Adolin had Evie, but I mean Evie died, and Dalinar isn't great either, and he's gonna have the separation, which like Evie always begrudged Dalinar for like, why are you like so separated from your child? Like I think that's the like really interesting part of this. I hope that even if we miss a bit of it in the time jump, we'll like get some like reflections on that afterwards. But that feels like a lot that I don't know if we will actually get.
I think we will. I think you're in a tough situation. It's going to be the slow heartbreak of Adolin watching a child continually grow up and him consistently feeling more and more despondent. Shallan, very similar. And I think, you gotta choose a place, how much time skip you want, right? And like, what's the purpose of like in this grand 10 arc thing of Shallan having a child, right? Like if we start back at a 5-year-old, I don't know, like
it reminds me a lot of Interstellar and the father leaving when she's a child and having to watch her grow up basically over video call. But it's not even and how tragic that is. And I just don't know if we're gonna get anything like that.
I think we're gonna get something like that. I think we will.
I think it's especially ironic that I feel like Adolin, because I feel like he, with Dalinar, he probably has the goal with the child of, I'm going to do things differently from Dalinar. I'm going to be there for my child. He's probably, was expecting to, I'm going to be like the father I never had. I'm going to be there for my child all the time. And now he physically can't. And I feel like
it's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be good.
It really is.
I think it's gonna be good. You can have that with a 10-year-old.
I hope so. I legitimately hope so. Yeah, I've got to go, but just quick parentheses because we don't really have much information on this. What in the world is the fourth moon? Like, what does this mean? Not that we can really theorize.
Flashback to like Oathbringer Shardcast of Third Storm.
Yeah.
Brandon just had to kick it up a notch.
That's exactly right. Like, fourth moon is one of the wildest, like, what is happening? I think it's that and like Town trying to kill cultivation of like, wait, what? What?
Yeah, so like, what?
Like, what are you talking about? This is wild.
Yeah.
So now we are down to less Shardcasters. They're all heading to Braze. So David's off in Braze. Veronica's going off to Braze. New Oath Pact. We're holding it together for just a little bit longer, guys. We'll be there in a sec. Thank you all for listening to this giant episode. What's this going to edit down to? Who knows?
Not much editing down to be had.
Not really. Nope. I'm not excited to edit this long thing, but the book is really big. And much, maybe if you feel like this in the book, much like the book, even though this podcast is very long, it's still a little rushed, which might be people's reaction to the book. Hey,
Now it's just a competition of whether where we take longer or whether the next podcast takes longer and who gets the top position of longest podcast.
And if Marvin even wants to edit something this longer, he's like, nope, I'm ending this at 3 hours. Yeah. Did we have anything on Fourth Moon, or should we just move? Like, there's just like, it's crazy.
I have stuff on Fourth Moon.
Okay.
I have some weird no evidence theories about some things.
Hit me.
So the Fourth Moon is made of strange rocks,
Yes.
I think it's called. And Braze is very specifically pointed out as being made of something else to the other planets. And it just hit me that these are very similar things that are being pointed out, which makes me wonder whether they're made of the same thing. And because Braze calls investiture to it or calls things to it, it makes me wonder whether the reason everyone keeps being called to the Shattered Plains, whether it's the Natanatans or the listeners or the Chasm Fiends, is because there is this moon there that is made of the same material that is Braze.
I don't think so. Because, like, the core of Braze, I don't think is Racium, but it does the Racium thing, which is like attract, draw, investiture.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. Yeah.
Whereas, like, the fragments of the moon seem to be either like more shieldy in nature, or like they're like obscuring things. What was drawing like the listeners and the Chasm Fiends in was the Well of Control.
Yeah,
I disagree with that.
I mean, that's what's stated in the book. It's like, it's the tone of like the Rhythm of Control, or the Well of Control is like the thing they followed.
But it is also the moon a bit.
think, see, the way I read it was they're following the tone to get to the well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that in the past that is what happened.
It's a combo of both the well and the moon, and I don't understand how they interact, but like they're like Tanavas seemed to think it was weird and important, so I don't know.
Yeah, like the moon is definitely hiding the well, because like most people can't detect it.
I had thought it was potentially the other way round, because the moon seems to have broken and been put under the Shattered Plains before the shards even got there. Which made me think that, that Ray's put it there very specifically. I guess it could like be protection. But yeah, no, I saw the Venli plotline as the Chasm Fiends very specifically wanting to point out the well. But yeah, I don't think that necessarily means that in the past, that's why everyone's been pulled to the Shattered Plains. Also, I don't think Braze is made of Razium, because I think Braze existed before Adolin was shattered.
What does that even mean?
It was made of the part of Adonalsium that would become Odio.
That does that.
That's a stupid thing that exists.
I will say, given the Braze thing, I had an idea that maybe that it collecting investiture is why the barrier storm is kind of around it for whatever reason. Like the investiture is drawn to Braze somehow. I don't know. I haven't fleshed this out. What's going on with the barrier storm? Is it even there? Who knows?
There's also like the hidden watchers that.
Yeah.
With the moon.
With the moon and the what is that? The Amiens? I don't know.
Yeah.
That does sound like Amiens, like just from that description.
Yeah, I just like had it in mind that they arrived later than that. But like, who knows?
I don't know. We're gonna do a whole podcast on this and weird stuff in Wind and Truth, because we will not be wanting for topics. Which is good, because we gotta make it last, baby.
Also, when I was looking into all the stuff with the moon, I noticed, and I'm sure people have noticed this before, that excluding this fourth moon, there's 16 celestial bodies in the Rosharan system. But if you include the moon, there's 17. And just the whole idea of 17th shard. I don't know what's going on there, but
Frost broke the moon.
It feels deliberate.
The dragons did it.
That there's 16 like celestial bodies.
No, Adonalsium did it, because like, my number's gonna be 16, smack out of the sky.
Get out there.
Can't do 17.
Like, doesn't fit. Get out of here.
This is Adonalsium rendition.
And now we know that like Cosmere numerology is like actually a thing
God.
from Tanavas.
I don't know if I want to even get into how much the numbers thing irritate me. I don't know if we need to get into it right now because it's been a while. But I'll rant about this on a stream. It's stupid and I don't like it. And Brandon, anyway.
What are Honor's 10 purposes, Brandon?
Well, they're retributions now, so I don't know if we're ever gonna see them.
What are Retribution's 21 purposes? Oh, wait, no, it would be 19.
It'd be 19. Yeah. Easy.
Yeah.
I do have a small quibble with like the numbers that Tanavas talks about.
Yeah.
Because he talks about 10 and 5.
Yes.
And that makes sense. Like metric and stuff like goes up in 5s to 10 and all of that. But then he talks about 1, and 1 does not fit that pattern.
I mean, it kind of makes
I don't
sense
think-
'cause it ate an LCM, but it seems like a bit of a stretch to me.
Yeah, like, I didn't think they were part of a pattern. They were just like, okay, these are auspicious numbers I can work with. Like, I can't work with 9, but like 1, 5, 10, 16, I can.
I'm holding back, guys. I think we're getting to the point where we can start wrapping up the podcast. Wow. Do we have other things to rant about? Things we loved? Things like that. Wow.
I think as we're starting to wrap up, the biggest thing to tackle that's left is the fate of Kharbranth.
That was
Because I
wild.
feel like this is a divisive topic.
I think it might be a divisive topic. Yeah.
Because personally, I love Taravangian being a big old hypocrite.
I like it too. I think it's really
Like-
good, actually.
The tidal wave scene is so impactful. That's what scares the Creme out of cultivation, and ultimately, like, yeah, she's getting out of Dodge as soon as she can. Because, like, oh, wait, like, the crazy guy who murdered his family is becoming retribution now? Hell no, I'm out of here. There were, like, a few lines, like, in the later interludes that kind of, like, emphasized to me he did that to, like, prove himself to the other shards. Like, this was, like, deliberate ploy. So, like, the fact that, like, it's all fake is, like, yes. Not that he needs another weakness, but this is just another weakness. Because, like, if that ever gets out, like, his credibility is destroyed.
It's so crunchy.
Like, people aren't, like, the shards aren't going to be as scared at him. Like, right now, like, they're intimidated him because, like, he's a double shard. And also, they're going to be finding out that he murdered his family. As soon as they know, like, no, his family's still alive. He was a big old liar and just wants us to think he's scary. Like, he's going to have a rougher time. I support this decision, Brandon.
I think it also gives it gives him a weakness, because I've always seen the way he interacts with Kharbranth to be different to the way he interacts with the other nations. Like, Kharbranth is special to him. So if the other shards find out about all the people of Kharbranth still being alive and they attack them, then I think, like, that's a giant hole in Taravangian instead of, like, the shard of retribution itself. And it's kind of like that backdoor that they could go into to fight against and harm the vessel instead of the shard.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, even Taravangian says specifically, like, you know, why he, you know, killed them was because, like, you know, I know that, you know, I knew you would use this against me. It's like the one chink in my armor, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that he still has that. I think it kind of has to be relevant later on. I mean, I'm sure we'll see more of it.
Yeah.
Initially, when, like, we got that tsunami scene, I didn't love it. Like, it was, you know, it was cool, but I didn't love it just because I felt that saving Kharbranth had been a lot of Taravangian. Like, as him, the person, I felt like that was a lot of his motivation for a lot of the previous books. Was like, you know, I want to protect my family, I want to protect Kharbranth, and that was like the main purpose of him bargaining with Odium. It seems slightly strange to me that he would just wipe him off, even if he's, you know, saving everyone else. It still seemed a bit strange that he would just sacrifice the one thing that he had worked toward for like most of his life. No, I did like the fact that he saved them, actually.
So I'm going to get onto the hill that I will die on until we get like definitive proof that this is not the case. I do not think that he could have actually harmed anyone in Kharbranth. I think the way he set it up was that he always knew and had to remove them and put them somewhere else to save them, because I think the deal from Oathbringer still stands, because the deal in my mind is made with the shard, and we see that in this book when Tanavast is basically booted out from honor and Reyes goes, oh, I can leave now, and he can't, and Tanavast makes a comment of, the deal you made with the Shard of Honor is still in place. And I've gone back and read the Oathbringer scene so many times.
Many
at this
times,
point.
everyone.
So many times. And the wording of it is basically, I will not attack Kharbranth or the people in it for several generations. It's not, I'm promising you Taravangian Kharbranth, which I think is how it's presented in this book. And I'm like, that's not the wording, though. That's not the deal that was made. And if the other deals that are made between Odium and someone else still stand, like the one with Dalinar and the one with Honor, then there is no reason this one should not still stand. So therefore, he's setting up the ploy of, oh, I'm going to kill everyone, but he has to save them. Like, there is no way he could have sent that tidal wave with the intent to kill, because they had to live, because that was the deal. Also, tidal waves don't really work that way, and the whole... If you live in a tidal wave area, then the instructions that you get are to go to higher ground. Kharbranth is on a slope on a hill. That would have had... It's big. Must have just been like this giant magical thing to go all the way over Kharbranth. Yeah. Otherwise, Kharbranth is actually a very shallow hill. There is like one of those two options, but also it's not one big wave, it's multiple waves. Anyway, I just know some things about tsunamis, and that's not how they work.
Well, magic solves all the consequences.
Yeah, like this is a magic tsunami. It's fully capable of killing everyone. I could see it going either way. I don't have a high faith in the idea Brandon went back and read that scene.
Oh, yeah.
I think in Brandon's mind, it was like, oh yeah, like he gave it to Taravangian, blah, 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 murder everyone, but not really. I
fully agree with you. Brandon's going down the path of it's Taravangians now to do what he wants with. I think that is a inconsistency with the books, and it should not be that way.
I do think when Tanavast died. Nah, he died.
He died.
Yeah, he died.
He definitively died.
He definitively died. He said something that is like, it was because the agreement was made with like the Shard of Honor, like the Shard of Honor being important. I'd have to reread the exact wording. I don't remember it right now.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like it was like, oh, with honor, the power of oaths and things, like it seemed like that mattered. So I don't necessarily know if any agreement with any shard like that would hold.
Then why does the contract still hold?
I don't know.
Because like we've already seen levels of that. Because like the whole race promising not to use loopholes wasn't. Like there's layers here. Like it's not.
Yeah. Wait. Sorry, Jess. Which contract?
Sorry. The one with Dalinar. Like by that logic, to me, it's the one with Dalinar should no longer be in place, because Dalinar is not the Shard of Honor at that time.
You mean after like Retribution ascends, just to be clear?
No, sorry. I mean the end of Oathbringer, like when Dalinar makes the champion contest with Odium. Mm-hmm. He is not the Shard of Honor. So just by that logic, that should no longer hold Odium to a contest.
But that's the contest of champions was with Odium. Like eventually they would do it. Dalinar is calling in that chip of like, hey, you promised you would do this way in the past. Not that he knew that he had
He didn't
promised.
know that.
He had been told like about a contest from champions, from the Stormfather, from the visions. That like that is still held by that previous one.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
And it is
and
talked about in
Dalinar
the flashbacks.
is de facto honor.
Yeah,
at
he's
this
like the
point.
representative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like he could have released race in Odium,
Yeah.
in Odium
True.
from the system.
Swap.
So like he has some status.
Yeah.
That's true. I
Okay.
still stand on this hill and I will die on it.
Well, hopefully it's a
Unlike the people
high
in
hill, or
Kharbranth.
else you'll be tidal waved away.
I have in the past and still am a big person who does not like fake out deaths. I think this is the best fake out death that Brandon has ever done.
I agree. Yeah.
And I know other people do not agree with that, but I
Yes.
think it is. This is the best fake out death.
Yeah. You will hear these opinions.
I have a couple things
Go for it.
I want to talk about. And I will give y'all a choice of which you get first. Do you want the excited screaming or the frustrated ranting?
Let's go with excited screaming, I think.
Yeah, let's do that.
Hey, guys, guess what?
What?
Reason. We know all of Aiden
yes,
Aldium.
that's very
Oh,
cool.
so many shard names. Your Vidrius is Reason.
Finally.
Metal Intorius, the great dragon god, is Valor.
Yeah, you get a dragon god.
Chankosar is Invention, I think. Something along
Something
those
like
lines.
that. Yeah.
The second dragon shard, yet another
Yes.
blob that Brandon lied to us.
Brandon's a big fat liar.
He
There was
didn't
one
know.
dragon shard.
There's
because
no way
one
he
dragon
knew.
shard was stupid.
Yeah. He just changed his mind for sure. 100%. Getting some Valor backstory, like, oh yeah, we can do this. But I love the name Reason as a shard. Like, I think that's a really excellent one. I love like almost the Greek philosopher vessel name. Amazing. And also seemed like that's the shard that went to hide. I think that's very clear. So it's like answered it all up. It's good. Also, bonus shout out exist. So we get the Dawn shard as well. So that's fun as well.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, I like the fact that like the shard of like thinking things through immediately went, this is bad, I'm gonna hide.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm like,
that was good.
Yeah, tracks.
Can I just very quickly about Hoyd's Dawn Shard? I know on this show I've said there's no way Hoyd has the Dawn Shard on Roshar. That's incredibly stupid. I will say that I'm right that it was incredibly stupid and he did bring it there and everyone calls him on it. That's like, that's really dumb. So I still feel a little vindicated, even though I'm still technically wrong, that everyone also thinks that's really stupid.
Yeah.
And on Hoyd, I did love the scene of just how Odium or Paravangia just vaporizes him.
It's
just like just one sentence where it's just and Wit was vaporized in a puff of red mist. Just bye bye. It was kind of it's obvious that he didn't actually die.
We're like gank that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of obvious that he didn't
Teravanger
actually
care
die.
as much, but the shards hated him.
Yeah. Why could Teravangian do that in the tower? I'm not entirely sure with the shield, but whatever. That's probably fine.
Because I think that was just before Shield went up. Is how I'm rationalizing it in my brain.
The timeline of these scenes is a little weird for that ending. I don't really understand. Yeah.
They do seem to jump around a little bit.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Frustrated ranting now?
Sure. Let's do frustrated rant.
Brandon. Words mean things. Avatar, the word means things. When you use words to describe things that are not that thing in a very magically enhanced way, because like in the Cosmere, avatars means a certain thing when a shard creates an avatar, a capital A avatar. And then in this book, he has shards creating lowercase a avatars of what avatars actually are. Brandon.
I just a small point of order. The first time we saw Avatar, it was lowercase in Oathbringer. And with the autonomy avatars, that was lowercase. So it's actually more
Which is
confusing.
stupid.
Now we know better.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it wasn't capital A. I'm sorry. That's all. I don't
Brandon.
disagree.
Brandon, look into my eyes.
He's watching
You
this.
are
He
bad
watched
at
this
words.
show. Obviously,
Listen to me. Don't call Shardic avatars in that the semi-autonomous, like, other separate entity. Use avatars for what avatars actually are. Which
and
is a
like it makes
physical
sense in this book.
manifestation.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
I'm sure Brandon's watching our 4-hour Shardcast episode.
Oh yeah, he's totally here. Just put it on the drive. Listening to this.
Did I make this beta comment every single time it came up? Yes, I did. I did.
Look, anything we complain about, we put in the beta. Don't worry.
Do I still complain about heavenly ones? Hell yes. That's stupid. Why are they calling their enemies heavenly ones?
Yeah, along with Hoyd, remember how there was like a big thing in the fandom about Hoyd and Jasnah getting in a relationship? Yeah, they're done. Like, oh, interesting.
That problem solved.
Okay, interesting.
It's like, why?
I'm so glad. It feels a little like how Shallan and Kaladin were kind of a thing in Words of Radiance, and then we're just like, I mean, they kind of looked at each other sometime. In Oathbreaker, and then Shallan went with Adolin, and I do like some lines here in this book where it's like, actually, Shallan and Kaladin, we would have been bad for each other, and like we would have made each other worse. I'm like, thanks for that, Brandon. But just why did we do this? Like, I imagine this is Cosmere significant later. That's the only thing. I don't know.
I think Brandon had like an idea and then went like, actually no.
What if
like, changed
Jasnah
his
becomes
mind.
Queen of Roshar after book 10 and then has to like be like having a spat with Hoyd? Like that would be fun. That would be fun. Later.
Like having snarky exes having to work together.
Yes, that sounds great. That would be good. But I'm like, I don't know why we did this. I don't know.
Yeah. It did give me the vibe of like Brandon originally planning to do more with it, and then he kind of like changed his minds later on.
I don't
decided
know.
to just
It's like,
end it
it
with that.
wasn't the original plan.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I don't even know what's the original plan anymore.
Definitely with Hoyd Jasnah in this book in particular, I wish it had just been mentioned a bit more throughout it, because we get the line of, oh yeah, I broke up with Hoyd, and then there's multiple conversations that happen between Jasnah and Hoyd. In any of them, it's like, yeah, we had a conversation about the contract and how things are meant to work, and like there's no awkwardness, that there's no like delayed responses because people don't want to talk to each other, and then we get it at the end again. And I just think we needed a little bit more of a through line there.
Brandon not doing character crunch? That's shocking to me. Still bitter about Cytonic, but we don't need to get into that. But, what else? Last things.
I would like to jump back to Jasnah.
Okay, great.
And the debate.
Okay.
Because we didn't mention the lesson.
We didn't mention it.
And firstly, I don't like the Taravangians just like, we need to talk about the lesson. Because that's just what we know it as now. Like it's I think it's the title of the chapter back in Way of Kings.
It is.
And I don't know why, like I don't like that he just uses those words.
Moloch
Because I don't
obviously
think
has
he would
access to
know
chapter
those
titles,
words.
Jess. Obviously.
Like, no, it's encoded in the spiritual realm.
Yeah, he could have looked at it. Yeah.
Odium looks back, he sees a big old label called The Lesson over that event.
Yeah, with a chapter arch. You can see that in the spiritual realm. That's a fact.
Yeah, I don't like that this is the thing that she's immediately really worried about and that starts the downfall, because she's not like that in Way of Kings. Like she's pretty open with what she's doing. The only thing she's hiding is the fact that she's soul casting them. But she also has a fake soulcaster, so that's even explainable. But she's not doing this in secret or anything. And there's a line back in Way of Kings about how she's doing this kind of tangentially as a thank you to Taravangian for letting her stay in the city, even though it's causing issues in the city with her
that's just
being
not
a
mentioned
heretic.
here, right?
Yeah, it's never brought up that like she did it as a like, oh, I tried to do a nice thing to help your city. And I don't think that makes her a subject of odium at all. So I don't know. I just don't like the way that it was brought up as a, oh, gotcha, I've got you with this. Because I think she would just be calmer about it and be a lot more straightforward of, yeah, I did that. That's what I thought the best thing to do was. So I did that. What are you trying to get out of me here?
Should just hit harder. Like it was pretty cool, but it's just like, I don't know. Just the drama wasn't there for me in those.
Yeah,
this is fine, I guess.
I think just like all the ad hominem attacks on her is another one of those things where like she is a scholar who has studied philosophy for who knows how long, but she's a heretic who has to deal with people constantly going after her character, but she doesn't do anything to fight back against like these personal attacks that have immediately started to come at her. And that's very frustrating.
Will you have any final thoughts, final things?
We've already discussed him a bit, but I'll say I'm kind of split on, I mean, just going back to Azamir. I was very happy about the Taln, but also the Taln stuff is almost dampened by Ash not doing anything, just ever. I was thinking about today of the fact that Abidi comes into the room and it seems weird that Ash doesn't do anything. She just sits on the ground while Taln stands up, like she's not getting up to defend Taln. She just kind of sits there passively. And that's kind of disappointing to me because I feel like if her character like clearly cares about him so much, then why is she not doing anything? So I guess
she only cares about him like a brother, not as a lover.
Right.
Totally like, I'll
stand
up to defend my lover, not my brother, though. He can die.
Right. Go read the Oathbringer scene in Battle of Thalen Fields where she's like, I'll never forget those hands. Like, yeah, in a totally sibling way. Like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm sure we'll get Ash stuff later on, but we've gotten nothing despite her like being in several scenes, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I know Rassar has a really big problem with the fact that the female heralds have basically done nothing so far. At least we have more of them on screen now, but they don't really do anything compared to the male heralds. But I think maybe the thing with Ash in that scene, it could play into her issues with being seen by other people, like how she destroys all the paintings and statues of herself. So if she's trying to basically hide herself so she's not recognized, then I could see that playing into it, but I don't think it's obvious enough.
I don't think it's just like in the POV. Yeah. Especially when like in the flashbacks she really wanted to like be involved. So it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I do think like her destroying like the depictions of her is more, you shouldn't be worshiping me, more than I don't want to be perceived.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I do find it really cute in the flashbacks, though, like all of the nicknames that Yezrian has for her. And I just have to stop and pretend that, stop thinking about the fact that she's like, 70 years old at some point, and he still calls her like the same names he called her when she was a little girl.
That's
so
yikes.
I know that because the names are super cute.
Yeah.
One last thing on Taln. I'm also very curious about like the weapon that Kalak made for Taln and then Taln lost somehow. So it talks about like Kalak is still like annoyed at Taln for losing his weapon, which I'm very curious about that because like, you know, I can't imagine like what kind of weapon. I mean, I'm sure it's not just, you know, some random weapon. I feel like it has to be the weapon that Taln tried to use to kill cultivation. I feel like it's got to be something like that.
I guess. Sure.
Which I want to know more about.
Yeah. I do as well.
If you could tell us about that, Brandon, that'd be great.
It's eventually, for sure.
I hope we don't have to wait till book 9.
Probably will.
We probably will.
It just reminds me of Hoyd giving Kaladin the flute, and then Kaladin just loses the flute. And then the flute turns out to be the weapon in the end.
Yeah. They didn't get that.
Well,
back.
it's destroyed.
Yeah. Well, he didn't get that flute back.
Both of them, like one of them's lost, the other's destroyed.
Off Herald things, I just want to make a quick crazy thing that it's wild that Videl's keys are the keys to immortality, which was like, that was a really cool bit of lore. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And also just the heralds being able to use their surge binding before like being heralds. Like I knew Ashen like was destroyed with the surge binding, but I didn't think they'd still be able to necessarily use powers on Roshar. Like that's like, all that stuff is crazy. We're absolutely going to do a whole episode, but I just wanted to give a shout that that's crazy.
I wonder if it's because the powers came from Odium originally, and then Odium came with them to Roshar.
You know, I don't. There's a lot of mechanics things that it's like, what's going on here? And so we'll maybe dig into that. And like, yeah. Any other final things? Maybe I'll just wrap with saying, though I had a lot of fun here, especially hearing some rants. I really like this book. I think it's a really good book. I can understand why people like, it could be polished a little more. But book worked real well for me, and I'm really excited for the back half. I think everything I'm pretty stoked about, except really Jasnah. Like Jasnah is like, that needed to hit harder for me. I don't know.
Despite my complaints, like I do, in general, I enjoyed the book. I think it was, like, I think there were parts that could have used some more revision, but overall, I liked it.
Yeah, I was the same. It's not my favorite book by Brandon, but it's still a Brandon book. I don't hate the thing. I do enjoy reading it, and I definitely read it again. And the ending is definitely something that once you start it, you just don't want to stop it.
The highs are so high, and
yeah.
And with so much going on, I think most people will probably have something to complain about. So how will that go in the fandom? We'll find out.
Statistically, like there's so much going on, you're going to have some sort of problem.
Especially with like expectations, you know, like with me with Mishram, right? Like when you have expectations, it's like, it's just easier to be disappointed by them, I think. And I think that's just going to get worse as the series goes on with like a big series, because you keep getting ideas of this is what I wanted it to be, and it wasn't, right? So I think that's fair. Like
that was the problem with Lost Metal, right? Like the expectations for the book were so high and so different to what we got. And I think it's the same with this one. Like the expectations of what people want from this book are going to be so high. And it's the question of whether the book actually reaches those expectations for people.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're not doing Who's That Cosmere Character, guys. We're 2 hours over where we should be in the raw recording, and that's bad. And I'm not looking forward to editing this. But I hope you enjoyed listening to this. You can find us on 7shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. Come talk about Wind and Truth. You can talk on the forums. You talk on our Discord. I'm sure the Discord is wild. And of just so much chatter, I'm sure. And you can find us on some social medias, I guess. And if you like our stuff, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/17shard. And we are going to have weekly-ish Wind and Truth podcasts. I say ish just because there's going to be like reactions too. You're not going to have to wait a week for reactions too. So it's going to be weekly plus. So yeah, we'll have that. I have to fit in State of the Sanderson, but like, we got a lot of things to talk about with Wind and Truth. So yeah. So stay tuned. So much more to talk about. Also, sorry, Shallan, that we didn't get to talk about you very much, but also the podcast's too long. So yeah, we'll talk about her. We'll talk about everything here. So thank you all for watching. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Ta.